The Epistle of Aristeas, prefixed to the words of the sages concerning the purport of this volume for the benefit of posterity, which proceeds as follows. Aristeas, begotten of Pythagoras, and a disciple of the disciples by the grace of the thrice great Hermes, drawing from the very seat of knowledge, wishes health and mercy unto all who shall come after. I testify that my master, Pythagoras the Italian, master of the wise and chief among the prophets, possessed a greater endowment of God and of wisdom than was granted to any individual subsequent to Hermes. Consequently, he resolved to convene his disciples, who had by then grown significantly in number and had been established as the foremost authorities across all regions for the discussion of this most precious art, so that their words might serve as a foundation for posterity. He therefore commanded Iximidris, a member of the highest council, to be the first to speak, who declared, "The first dictum." Iximidris declares, "I testify that the genesis of all things is a certain nature which is perpetual and coequal to all things. Furthermore, the visible natures, characterized by their genesis and decay, represent the temporal states wherein the ends to which that nature guides them are perceived and summoned. Now, I instruct you that the stars are igneous in constitution and are constrained within their bounds by the air. Were it not for the humidity and density of the air serving to separate the solar flames from living entities, the sun would assuredly consume all creatures. However, God has provided this interposing air, lest his creations be incinerated. Do you not observe that the sun, upon rising in the heavens, subdues the air with its heat, and that this warmth penetrates from the superior to the inferior regions of the air? If, therefore, the air did not continuously exhale those winds by which creatures are generated, the sun's heat would undeniably eradicate all living things. Yet the sun is restrained by the air, which triumphs by uniting the heat of the sun with its own heat, and the humidity of water with its own humidity. Have you not observed how tenuous water is drawn upward into the air through the agency of the sun's heat, thereby assisting the water against itself? Should the water fail to nourish the air with this tenuous moisture, the sun would unequivocally overpower the air. Consequently, the fire extracts moisture from the water, through which the air subdues the fire itself. Thus, fire and water are adversaries devoid of consanguinity, for the fire is hot and dry, whereas the water is cold and moist. The air, being warm and moist, reconciles these forces through its harmonizing medium. Thus the air is interposed between the humidity of water and the heat of fire to establish tranquility. And observe, all of you, how a spirit shall arise from the tenuous vapor of the air, for when heat is joined to moisture, there necessarily emanates a tenuous substance, which shall manifest as a wind. For the heat of the sun extracts a tenuous essence from the air, which likewise becomes spirit and life unto all creatures. All of this, however, is ordained in such a manner by the will of God, and a coruscation manifests when the heat of the sun touches and ruptures a cloud. The Turba states, "You have described the fire exquisitely, precisely in accordance with your comprehension of it, and you have placed your faith in the word of your brother." The second dictum. Iximidris declares, "I magnify the air in accordance with the profound discourse of Iximidris, for the great work is thereby enhanced. The air is both inspissated and rarefied. It assumes warmth and succumbs to cold. Its inspissation occurs when it is divided in the heavens by the elongation of the sun. Conversely, its rarefaction transpires when, through the exaltation of the sun in the heavens, the air becomes warm and is rarefied. This condition is comparable to the complexion of spring, within the division of the seasons, which is inherently neither warm nor cold. For just as the constituted disposition mutates in tandem with the shifting distinctions of the soul, so too is winter altered. Therefore the air becomes inspissated when the sun withdraws from it, whereupon cold supervenes upon humanity. To this the Turba replied, "You have described the air masterfully, providing a thorough account of your knowledge regarding its nature." The third dictum. Anaxagoras declares, "I proclaim that the foundation of all things created by God consists of weight and proportion, for weight governs all matter, and the weight and spicitude of the earth are rendered manifest through proportion, yet weight exists exclusively within a body. Furthermore, know, O Turba, that the spicitude of the four elements reposes within the earth. The spicitude of fire descends into the air, while the spicitude of the air, combined with that which it received from the fire, descends into the water. Finally, the spicitude of the water, augmented by the combined spicitudes of fire and air, comes to rest in the earth. Have you not observed how the spicitude of the four elements is conjoined within the earth? Consequently, the earth is the most heavily inspissated of all. Then the Turba replies, "You have spoken eloquently. Verily, the earth is more inspissated than the remaining elements, which therefore is the most rarefied of the four, and most worthy to embody the quintessential rarity among them." He answers, "Fire is the most rarefied of all, and unto it is drawn whatever is rarefied among these four. However, air is less rarefied than fire, as it is warm and moist, whereas fire is warm and dry, and that which is warm and dry inherently possesses greater rarity than that which is warm and moist." They ask of him, "Which element, then, is of less rarity than air?" He answers, "Water, for cold and moisture are inherent to it, and any cold, humid substance is of lesser rarity than a warm, humid one." Then they say unto him, "You have spoken the truth. What, therefore, is of less rarity than water?" He answers, "Earth, because it is cold and dry, and that which is cold and dry possesses less rarity than that which is cold and moist." Pythagoras declares, "You have provided an excellent description, O sons of the doctrine, of these four natures from which God has created all things. Blessed, therefore, is the one who comprehends what you have declared. For, from the very apex of the world, he shall discover no intention greater than his own. Let us, therefore, bring our discourse to perfection." They reply, "Instruct each participant to take up the discourse in turn." "Speak, O Pandolphus." The fourth dictum. Pandolphus declares, "I signify to posterity that air is a tenuous materialization of water, and it is not separated from it. It remains stationed above the dry earth, that is to say, the air concealed within the water that lies beneath the earth. Were this air not to exist, the earth could not remain suspended above the humid water." They answer, "You have spoken well, complete, therefore, your discourse." He continues, "The air concealed within the subterranean water is precisely what sustains the earth, preventing it from plunging into said water. Furthermore, it safeguards the earth from being inundated by those waters. The province of the air is therefore to occupy space and enforce separation between diverse elements, namely, water and earth. Moreover, it is constituted as a peacemaker between hostile forces, specifically water and fire, dividing them lest they mutually obliterate one another." The Turba states, "Should you provide an illustration of this principle, it would render the matter clearer to those who do not yet understand." He answers, "An egg serves as an apt illustration, for within it, four distinct elements are conjoined. The visible cortex, or shell, represents the earth, while the albumen, or white portion, constitutes the water. Furthermore, an exceedingly delicate inner cortex is attached to the outer shell, representing, as I have previously signified to you, the separating medium between earth and water, namely, the air that divides the earth from the water. Similarly, the yolk of the egg represents fire. The membrane containing the yolk corresponds to that secondary air, which separates the water from the fire. Yet they are intrinsically one and the same air, that which separates the frigid elements, the earth from the water, and that which separates the water from the fire. However, the lower air is of greater density than the upper air. Conversely, the upper air is more rarefied and subtle, being situated closer to the fire than the lower air. Within the egg, therefore, reside four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. However, the essence of the sun, exclusive of these four, is situated at the center of the yolk, and this constitutes the chick. Consequently, all philosophers engaged in this most excellent art have proposed the egg as an exemplar, employing this very symbol to preside over their great work. The fifth dictum. Aristotelius saith, "Know that the earth is an elevation and not a plain, for which reason the sun doth not ascend over all the terrestrial zones in a single hour, whereas, were it flat, the sun would rise instantaneously over the entirety of the earth." Parmenides saith, "Thou hast spoken with admirable brevity, O Aristotelius." He Answorth, "Is there aught that the Master hath bequeathed unto us which bears witness to the contrary? Nevertheless, I testify that God is one, having neither engendered nor been begotten, and that the summit of all things subsequent to him comprises earth and fire, for fire is tenuous and luminous, governing all things upon the earth, whereas the earth, being ponderous and dense, sustains all things that are ruled by fire." The sixth dictum. Lucas saith, "Ye speak solely regarding the four natures, and each among you observes some particular aspect concerning them. Now I testify unto you that all things which God hath created derive from these four natures, and the entities which have been fashioned therefrom shall return into them. Within these living creatures are generated and perish, and all events transpire exactly as God hath predestined." Democritus, the disciple of Lucas. Answorth, "Thou hast spoken astutely, O Lucas, in thy treatment of the four natures. Then saith Arislius, O Democritus, seeing that thy knowledge was derived from Lucas, it is presumptuous to speak amongst those who are intimately acquainted with thy master. Lucas Answorth, albeit Democritus received from me the science of natural phenomena, that knowledge was originally derived from the philosophers of the Indies, and from the Babylonians. I consider that he surpasses those of his own generation in this erudition. The Turba Answorth, when he attains unto that mature age, he shall provide no small measure of satisfaction, but being yet in his youth, he ought to keep silence. The seventh dictum. Lucusta saith, all those entities which have been described by Lucas are but two, of which one is neither comprehended nor articulated, save through piety, for it is neither seen nor felt. Pythagoras saith, thou hast broached a subject which, if carried to its conclusion, thou wilt describe with profound subtlety. State therefore what constitutes this thing which is neither felt, seen, nor known. Then it is that which remains unknown, because in this world it is discerned by reason, apart from its sensory agents, which are sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. O assembly of philosophers, know ye not that it is solely sight which can distinguish white from black, and hearing alone which can discriminate between a virtuous and a wicked word? Similarly, a wholesome odor cannot be separated by reason from one which is fetid, except through the olfactory sense, nor can sweetness be discriminated from bitterness, save by means of taste, nor smoothness from roughness, unless by touch. The Turba Answorth, thou hast spoken eloquently, yet hast thou omitted to discourse upon that particular entity, which is neither known nor described, except by reason and piety. Saith he, are ye then in such haste? Know that the entity which is cognized in none of these five manners is a sublime creation, and as such is neither seen nor felt, but is perceived by reason alone, of which very reason nature confesses that God is a partaker. They answer, thou hast spoken with profound truth and excellence. And I shall now provide a further explication. Know that this creation, that is to say, the world, possesseth a light, which is the sun, and this same light is more subtle than all other natures, being so ordered that living beings might attain unto vision. But if this subtle light were removed, they would be cast into darkness, perceiving naught except the light of the moon, or of the stars, or of fire, all of which are ultimately derived from the illumination of the sun, which causeth all entities to radiate light. To this end, God hath appointed the sun to serve as the light of the world, by reason of the sun's attenuated nature. And know that the aforementioned sublime creation possesseth no need for the light of this sun, because the sun resideth beneath that creation, which is infinitely more subtle and far more lucid. This illumination, which is more lucid than the radiance of the sun, they have derived from the light of God, which is more subtle than their own light. Know also that the created world is composed of two dense elements and two rare elements, yet nothing of the dense existeth within the sublime creation. Consequently, the sun is more rarefied than all inferior creations. The Turba Answorth, thou hast most excellently described that which thou hast related. And if, good master, thou shouldst utter aught whereby our hearts might be vivified, which presently are mortified by folly, thou wilt confer upon us a profound boon. The eighth dictum. Pythagoras saith, I affirm that God existed before all things, and with him there was naught, exactly as he was at the beginning. But know, all ye philosophers, that I declare this in order to fortify your understanding concerning these four elements and arcana, as well as the sciences pertaining thereto, unto which no man may arrive save by the will of God. Understand that when God was alone, he created four substances, fire, air, water, and earth, out of which elements he subsequently fashioned all others, both the sublime and the inferior, because he predestined from the beginning that all creatures extracted from water should multiply and increase, so that they might dwell within the world and execute his judgments therein. Consequently, prior to all else, he created the four elements, out of which he afterwards formed whatsoever he willed, that is to say, diverse creatures, some among which were produced from a single element. The Turba saith, which are these, O master, and they are the angels, whom he created solely out of fire. But the Turba, which then are created out of two, and out of the elements of fire and air, are the sun, the moon, and the stars composed. Hence the angels are more lucid than the sun, moon, and stars, because they are created from a single substance, which is less dense than two, whereas the sun and the stars are fashioned from a composition of fire and air. The Turba saith, and what concerning the creation of heaven? Then God created the heaven out of water and air, whence it is likewise composed of two, namely, the second of the rarer elements, which is air, and the second of the denser elements, which is water. And they, Master, continue thy discourse concerning these three, and rejoice our hearts with thy sayings, which serve as life unto the dead. But the other, Answorth, I declare unto you that God hath furthermore made creatures out of 3 elements, and out of 4. Out of 3 are created flying beings, beasts, and vegetation. Some among these are created out of water, air, and earth, while others are formed out of fire, air, and earth. But the Turba saith, distinguish these diverse creatures one from another. And he, beasts are created out of fire, air, and earth, perishing things out of fire, air, and water, because flying creatures, and all vegetation possessing a spirit, are created out of water, whereas all brute animals are derived from earth, air, and fire. Yet within vegetation there is no fire, for such things are created out of earth, water, and air. Whereat the Turba saith, let us assume that a fire, with your reverence's pardon, doth indeed reside within vegetation. And he, ye have spoken the truth, and I affirm that they do contain fire. And they, whence ariseth that fire? He, Answorth, out of the heat of the air which is concealed therein, for I have signified that a subtle fire is present within the air. But the elementary fire concerning which ye were in doubt is not produced, except within things that possess both spirit and soul. But out of the 4 elements were our father Adam and his descendants created, that is to say, of fire, air, water, and likewise earth. Understand, all ye who are wise, how everything which God hath created out of a single essence perisheth not until the day of judgment. The definition of death is the dissolution of the composite, however. There is no dissolution of that which is simple, for it is inherently singular. Death consists fundamentally in the separation of the soul from the body, because anything constituted of 2, 3, or 4 components is destined to disintegrate, and this very dissolution is death. Understand, furthermore, that no complex substance lacking fire can eat, drink, or sleep, for in all things possessing a spirit, it is the fire that consumes. The Turba inquires, how is it, Master, that the angels who are created of fire do not consume food, given your assertion that fire is the agent of consumption? He responds, thus you fall into doubt, each holding to his own opinion, and you have become adversaries. Yet, if you possess true knowledge of the elements, you would not deny these principles. I concur with all who judge that it is not simple fire that consumes, but rather dense fire. The angels, therefore, are not fashioned from dense fire, but from the most ethereal of subtle fires. Being created from that which is profoundly simple and exceedingly attenuated, they neither eat, drink, nor sleep. The Turba replies, Master, our faculties are capable of perception, for by the assistance of God we have thoroughly examined your teachings. However, our capacities for hearing and sight remain inadequate to bear such profound matters. May God reward you for the sake of your disciples, as it is for the purpose of instructing future generations that you have summoned us from our respective countries, a recompense for which you shall assuredly not fail to receive from the judge to come. Arislius states, seeing that you have assembled us for the benefit of posterity, I believe that no explanations would prove more useful than precise definitions of those 4 elements you have instructed us to master. He replies, I presume none of you are ignorant of the fact that all the wise have propounded their definitions in God. The Turba responds, should your disciples overlook anything, it is incumbent upon you, O Master, to prevent any omissions for the sake of future generations. He answers, if it pleases you, I shall commence the exposition here, as envious men have scattered these matters throughout their volumes. Otherwise I shall append it to the conclusion of the book. Whereupon the Turba says, place it wherever you deem it will be most invaluable for future generations. He declares, I shall place it where it will neither be recognized by the foolish nor overlooked by the sons of the doctrine, for it constitutes the key, the perfection, and the ultimate end. The 9th dictum. Examenus states, God created all things by his word. Having spoken unto them, let them be, and they were made, alongside the 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire, which he coagulated. Contrary things were thus commingled, for we observe that fire is hostile to water, water is hostile to fire, and both are adversarial toward earth and air. Yet God has united them in harmony, so that they might love one another. Out of these 4 elements, therefore, are all things created, heaven and its throne, the angels, the sun, the moon, and the stars, the earth and the sea, along with all entities residing within the sea. These are indeed varied and unalike, for their natures, as well as their forms, have been rendered diverse by God. Yet this diversity is far more profound than I have articulated. Each of these natures is intrinsically varied, and through a legion of variances, the constitution of each is rendered distinct. Now, this diversity subsists within all creatures, as they were forged from disparate elements. Had they been generated from a single element, they would have possessed concordant natures. However, as diverse elements are mingled herein, they surrender their original natures, for the dry, when mixed with the humid, and the cold, when combined with the hot, become neither cold nor hot. Similarly, the humid, when blended with the dry, becomes neither dry nor humid. However, when the four elements are fully commingled, they harmonize, and from this union proceed creatures that never attain perfection unless they are left by night to putrefy and become visibly corrupt. God subsequently completed his creation through the mechanisms of proliferation, sustenance, life, and governance. Sons of the doctrine, it is not without profound purpose that I have delineated the disposition of these four elements to you, for within them resides a secret arcanum. Two of these elements are perceptible to the senses of touch and vision, and their operations and virtues are well known. These are earth and water. Nevertheless, there exist two additional elements that are neither visible nor tangible, which yield nothing directly, whose locus is never perceived, and whose operations and forces remain unknown, save through their effects upon the former elements, namely, earth and water. Now, when these four elements are not commingled, no human desire can be accomplished. However, upon being mixed and departing from their fundamental natures, they transmute into an entirely different entity. Let us meditate upon these matters most carefully. The Turba states, "Master, if you speak, we shall give our utmost heed to your words." He replies, "I have now discoursed, and have done so thoroughly. I shall speak only words of utility, which you must follow precisely as they are spoken. Let all present recognize that no true tincture is produced except from our copper. Therefore do not exhaust your intellects and your wealth, lest you fill your hearts with sorrow. I shall provide you with a fundamental axiom. Unless you transmute the aforementioned copper into a state of whiteness, forging visible coins, and subsequently transform it once more into redness until a tincture results, you accomplish absolutely nothing. Therefore incinerate the copper, fracture it, and deprive it of its blackness through cooking, imbuing, and washing, until it achieves whiteness. Thereafter govern it." The 10th dictum. Aristeas declares, "Know that the key to this great work is the art of coins. Take therefore the body which I have shown to you and reduce it into thin tablets. Next, immerse the said tablets in the water of our sea, which is the permanent water. Once the vessel is covered, place it over a gentle fire until the tablets melt and dissolve into waters, or etheliae, which are one and the same. Blend, cook, and simmer this mixture over a gentle fire until brodium is produced, similar to saginatum. Subsequently stir in its water of etheliae until it becomes coagulated and the coins grow variegated, a state we refer to as the flour of salt. Cook it, therefore, until it is entirely deprived of its blackness, and the pristine whiteness appears. Then triturate it, amalgamate it with the gum of gold, and cook the mixture until it transforms into red etheliae. Exercise patience in your pounding, lest you succumb to weariness. Imbue the etheliae with its own water, that which previously issued from it, and which is also permanent water, until it assumes a red hue. This, then, is the burnt copper, which serves as both the leaven of gold and the flour thereof. Cook this substance with the permanent water, which remains perpetually with it, until the moisture is entirely evaporated. Continue this operation until all the water is consumed and the substance is reduced to a most subtle powder. The 11th dictum. Parmenides states, "You must realize that envious men have written voluminously concerning various waters, brodiums, stones, and metals, seeking only to deceive all those who aspire to attain true knowledge. Abandon all of these, therefore, and transmute the white into red, utilizing this our copper, taking copper and lead to represent the grease, or blackness, and employing tin for the liquefaction. Know, furthermore, that unless you govern the nature of truth, harmonizing its complexions and compositions impeccably, joining the consanguinis with the consanguinis, and the first with the first, you act improperly and will effect nothing. For natures will inevitably seek out their corresponding natures, follow them, and rejoice in their union. Within these bonds they putrefy and are generated anew. Because nature is governed by nature, she destroys it, reduces it to dust, obliterates it to nothingness, and ultimately renews it herself, repeating the cycle and frequently reproducing the exact same form. Therefore study the texts so that you may comprehend the nature of truth. What putrefies it and what renews it? What savor it possesses? what natural neighbors it claims, and how they love one another. Observe also how after such love, enmity and corruption intervene, and learn how these disparate natures must be united and brought to peace until they grow equally gentle within the fire. Having carefully observed these truths of the art, set your hands diligently to the great work. If indeed ye possess no understanding of the natures of truth, approach not the work, since naught shall follow but harm, disaster, and sorrow. Consider, therefore, the teachings of the wise, how they have encapsulated the entirety of the work in this maxim. Nature rejoices in nature, and nature contains nature. Within these words there is manifested unto you the whole of the work. Forsake, therefore, manifold and superfluous matters, and take quicksilver, coagulating it within the body of magnesia, in kuhul, or in sulfur that does not burn, render this same nature white, and place it upon our copper, whence it attains whiteness. And should ye cook it further, it becomes red, whereupon if ye proceed to coction, it is transmuted into gold. I assure you that it transforms the very sea into red, and the hue of gold. Know ye also that gold is not transmuted into redness save by permanent water, because nature rejoices in nature. Reduce therefore the same by means of coction into a humor, until the concealed nature appears. If therefore it be manifested externally, 7 times imbue the same with water, cooking, imbuing, and washing, until it becomes red. O those celestial natures, multiplying the natures of truth by the will of God. O that potent nature, which vanquished and conquered natures, and caused its own natures to rejoice and be glad. This therefore is that singular and spiritual nature unto which the God thereof can bestow what fire cannot. Consequently, we glorify and magnify that species, for nothing is more precious within the true tincture, nor can the like in the smallest degree be found. This is that truth which those who investigate wisdom cherish. For when it is liquefied with bodies, the most exalted operation is accomplished. If ye but knew the truth, what profound gratitude ye would bestow upon me. Learn, therefore, that whilst you are tinging the cinders, you must destroy those elements that are intermixed, for it overcomes those which are mixed, and transmutes them into its own hue. And just as it visibly overcame the surface, even so has it mastered the interior. And if one be volatile but the other endures the fire, either joined to the other endures the flame. Know also that if the vapors have whitened the surfaces, they shall most certainly whiten the interiors. Know further, all ye seekers after wisdom, that a single matter overcomes 4, and our sulphur alone consumes all things. The Turba Answorth, thou hast spoken with surpassing excellence, O Parmenides, yet thou hast not demonstrated the disposition of the smoke unto posterity, nor how the same is whitened. The 12th dictum. Lucas saith, I shall speak at this time, following the footsteps of the ancients. Know, therefore, all ye seekers after wisdom, that this treatise doth not proceed from the beginning of the governance. Take quicksilver, which is derived from the male, and coagulate it according to custom. Observe that I am speaking unto you in accordance with custom, for it has been already coagulated. Here, therefore, is not the commencement of the governance, but I prescribe this method, namely, that you shall take the quicksilver from the male, and shall impose it upon either iron, tin, or governed copper, and it shall be whitened. White magnesia is forged in the same manner, and the male is converted alongside it. But forasmuch as there exists a certain affinity between the magnet and the iron, therefore our nature rejoices. Take then the vapor, which the ancients commanded you to extract, and cook the same with its own body until tin is produced. Purge away its blackness according to custom, and cleanse and roast it at an equable fire until it is whitened. Yet every body is whitened with governed quicksilver, for nature converts nature. Take therefore magnesia, water of alum, water of nitre, water of the sea, and water of iron, whiten them with smoke. Whatsoever you desire to be whitened is whitened by means of this smoke, because it is intrinsically white, and whitens all things. Mix therefore the aforementioned smoke with its feces, until it is coagulated and becomes exceedingly white. Roast this white copper until it germinates of its own accord, since the magnesia when whitened does not suffer the spirits to escape, nor the shadow of copper to appear, because nature contains nature. Take therefore, all ye sons of the doctrine, the white sulphurous nature, whiten it with salt and dew, or with the flour of white salt, until it becomes surpassingly white. And know ye that the flour of white salt is ether derived from athelia. The same must be boiled for 7 days, until it shall become as gleaming marble. For when it has achieved this condition, it is a most profound arcanum, seeing that sulphur is mingled with sulphur, whence an excellent work is accomplished, by reason of the affinity between them. because natures rejoice in meeting their own natures. Take therefore Marduk and whiten the same with Gedenby, which is to say, wine and vinegar and permanent water. Roast and coagulate this mixture until the whole no longer liquefies in a fire stronger than its own, namely, the former fire. Securely seal the mouth of the vessel, yet let it remain associated with its neighbor, that it may kindle the whiteness thereof. And beware, lest the fire blaze up, for in such a case it becomes red prematurely. And this shall profit you nothing, because in the inception of the governance you require the white. Afterwards coagulate the same until you attain the red. Let your fire remain gentle during the whitening, until coagulation takes place. Know that once it is coagulated we pronounce it the soul, and it is more swiftly converted from nature into nature. This therefore is sufficient for those who occupy themselves with the art of coins, because a single thing brings it to fruition, but many operate therein. For ye require not a multitude of things, but one thing only, which in each and every grade of your work is transmuted into another nature. The Turba saith, Master, if you speak as the wise have spoken, and do so with brevity, they shall follow you who do not wish to be wholly engulfed in darkness. The 13th dictum. Pythagoras saith, we posit another governance which does not stem from a different root, but merely differs in name. And know, all ye seekers after this science and wisdom, that whatsoever the envious may have enjoined within their tomes concerning the composition of natures that agree together, in savour there is but one, albeit to the sight they appear as diverse as possible. Know, also, that the subject which they have described in so many ways follows, and attains its companion without fire, even as the magnet is drawn to the iron, unto which the said thing is not vainly compared, nor to a seed, nor to a matrix, for it shares a likeness with these as well. And this self-same thing, which follows its companion without the aid of fire, causes a multitude of colors to appear upon embracing it, for this reason that the said singular thing enters into every regimen, and is found everywhere, being a stone, and yet not a stone, common and precious, hidden and concealed, yet known by everyone, of a single name and of manifold names, which is the spume of the moon. This stone, therefore, is not a stone, for it is infinitely more precious. Without it nature never operates anything. Its name is one, yet we have designated it by many names on account of the supreme excellence of its nature. The Turba answereth, O Master, wilt thou not disclose some of those names for the guidance of seekers? And it is called white ethelia, white copper, and that which flees from the fire and alone whitens copper. Fracture, therefore, the white stone and afterwards coagulate it with milk. Then pound the calx within the mortar, taking utmost care that the humidity does not escape from the vessel, but coagulate it within the vessel until it shall become a cinder. Cook it also with the spume of Luna, and regulate the process. For ye shall find the stone fractured, and already imbued with its own water. This therefore is the stone which we call by all names, which assimilates the work and drinks of it, and is the very stone out of which also all colors appear. Take therefore that same gum, which is derived from the scoriae, and mix it with the cinder of calx, which you have governed, and with the feces which you know, moistening them with permanent water. Thereafter, observe whether it has been reduced to a powder. Should it not be so, roast it within a fire more intense than the first, until it may be pulverized. Subsequently, imbue it with permanent water, and as the colors increasingly vary, so too allow them to be subjected to greater heat. Understand, moreover, that if you take white quicksilver or the spume of Luna and proceed as instructed, disintegrating it with a gentle fire, it shall coagulate and become a stone. From this stone, therefore, once it is fractured, a multitude of colors will manifest before you. Should any ambiguity arise for you within our discourse, proceed exactly as commanded, governing the substance until a white and coruscating stone is produced, thereby achieving your purpose. The 14th dictum. Axabophon states, Master, thou hast spoken without envy, exactly as befits thee, and for this may God grant thee reward. Pythagoras replies, May God likewise deliver thee, Axabophon, from envy. He then continues, Ye must know, O assembly of the wise, that sulfurs are contained within sulfurs, and humidity within humidity. The Turba responds, The envious, O Axabophon, have uttered sentiments akin to this. Instruct us, therefore, what is this humidity? And he replies, Humidity is a venom, and when this venom penetrates a body, it tinges it with an invariable color, in no way permitting the soul to separate from the body, for it is equal unto it. Regarding this, the envious have declared, When one flees and the other pursues, the one eventually seizes upon the other. Thereafter they flee no longer, because nature has apprehended its equal in the manner of an adversary, and they mutually destroy one another. For this reason, from the mixed sulphureous sulfur a most precious color is engendered, one that neither varies nor retreats from the flame, once the soul enters the interior of the body, binding it together and imparting its tincture. I shall reiterate my discourse concerning the Tyrian dye. Take the creature known as Kenkel, seeing that all its water possesses a Tyrian hue, and govern it with a gentle fire, as is customary, until it is reduced to earth, wherein a faint trace of color will remain. However, should you desire to obtain the Tyrian tincture, take the humidity that the substance has expelled, and introduce it gradually into a vessel, adding the tincture whose color previously displeased you. Thereafter decoct it with that same marine water until it attains dryness. Subsequently moisten it with that humor, desiccate it gradually, and cease not to imbue, to decoct and to dry, until it is entirely saturated with its own humor. Then abandon it for several days within its vessel, until the most precious Tyrian color emerges upon its surface. Observe how I delineate this regimen for you. Prepare it with the urine of youths, with marine water, and with immaculate permanent water, so that it may be tinged then. Decoct it over a gentle fire until the blackness thoroughly departs from it, rendering it easily pulverized. Decoct it, therefore, within its own humor until it swathes itself in a red hue. Yet if you wish to elevate it to the Tyrian color, imbue it with continual water and mix it to the extent ye deem sufficient, according to the judgment of the eye. Blend it adequately with permanent water, and decoct it until the rust absorbs the moisture. Following this, wash it with the marine water thou hast prepared, which is the water of desiccated calx. Cook it until it imbibes its own moisture, and repeat this procedure day by day. I assure you that a color will subsequently manifest before you, the likes of which the Tyrians themselves have never produced. And should ye desire an even more exalted hue, place the gum into the permanent water, using it to dye the substance alternately, and afterwards desiccate it beneath the sun. Then restore it to the aforementioned water, and the black Tyrian color shall be intensified. Be aware, however, that ye cannot impart the purple color save by means of cold. Take, therefore, water that possesses a cold nature, and steep wool therein until it extracts the potency of the tincture from the water. Know also that the philosophers have named the force emanating from that water the flower. Seek, therefore, your intent within the said water. Immerse therein the contents of the vessel for days and nights, until it is arrayed in a most precious Tyrian color. The 15th dictum. Frictus declares, O all ye seekers of wisdom, know that the foundation of this art, for the sake of which many have perished, is entirely singular. There exists one substance stronger than all natures, deemed profoundly sublime in the estimation of philosophers, yet regarded by fools as the most common of things. For us, however, it is a substance to be deeply reverenced. Woe unto all ye fools! How ignorant are ye of this art, for which ye would willingly perish if only ye understood it! I swear to you that were kings acquainted with it, none of us would ever attain this prize. Oh, how this nature transmutes body into spirit! Oh, how admirable is nature, how she presides over all and ultimately conquers all! Pythagoras says, Name this nature, O Frictes. And he replies, It is an exceedingly sharp vinegar, one that reduces gold into sheer spirit. Without this vinegar, neither whiteness, nor blackness, nor redness, nor rust can be engendered. Understand that when it is mixed with the body it is contained therein, becoming one with it, it converts the body into a spirit and tinges it with a spiritual, invariable tincture that remains indelible. No, furthermore, that should ye place the body over the fire without vinegar, it shall be scorched and entirely corrupted. And recognize, moreover, that the first humor is cold. Exercise caution, therefore, regarding the fire, which is profoundly inimical to cold. Accordingly, the wise have proclaimed, Govern gently until the sulfur becomes incombustible. The wise have already revealed the disposition of this art to those endowed with reason, and the crowning principle of their art, as they have noted, is that a mere fraction of this sulfur can incinerate a formidable body. Consequently, they venerate it, and invoke it at the very inception of their texts, and thus did the son of Adam describe it. For this vinegar burns the body, converts it into a cinder, and simultaneously whitens it, which, if ye decoct it thoroughly and purge it of its blackness, transforms into a stone, emerging as a coin of the most intense whiteness. Decoct the stone, therefore, until it is completely disintegrated, and subsequently dissolve and temper it with marine water. Know also that the commencement of the entire great work is the whitening, which is succeeded by the redness, and ultimately the perfection of the endeavor. Following this, however, through the agency of vinegar and by the will of God, a supreme perfection ensues. Now I have revealed to you, O disciples of this turba, the disposition of the single substance, which is more perfect, more precious, and more honorable than all other natures, and I swear to you before God that I have searched long among the ancient tomes to attain the knowledge of this one thing, whilst fervently praying to God that he might reveal its identity to me. My prayer was answered. He revealed to me clean water, whereby I recognized pure vinegar, and the more I studied the texts, the more profoundly I was illuminated. The 16th dictum. Socrates declares, "Know, O multitude of those who yet remain among the sons of the doctrine, that no tincture can be generated without lead, which possesses the requisite virtue. Have ye not observed how thrice great Hermes infused redness into the body, whereupon it was transmuted into an invariable hue? Know, therefore, that the primary virtue is vinegar, and the secondary is the lead of which the wise have spoken. Should it be infused into all bodies, it renders them unalterable, tinging them with an invariable color. Take, therefore, lead derived from the stone called kuhul. Ensure it is of the most superior quality, and let it be decocted until it turns black. Thereafter, pulverize it with water of nitre until it assumes the thickness of grease, and decoct it once more within a brilliantly intense fire until the spicitude of the body is eradicated, the water having been cast off. Kindle a flame above it, therefore, until the stone becomes immaculate, abounding in precious metal, and exceptionally white. Subsequently, pound the substance with dew and the sun, and with both sea and rain water for 31 days. Proceed for 10 days with salt water, and 10 days with fresh water, whereupon you shall discover it to be akin to a metallic stone. Boil this substance once more with water of nitre, until it is transformed into tin through liquefaction. Continue the decoction until it is entirely deprived of moisture and rendered dry. Understand, however, that upon becoming dry, it swiftly absorbs whatever remains of its humor, for it is burnt lead. Exercise profound caution nonetheless, lest it be consumed by fire. Thus, we designate it incombustible sulfur. Triturate the substance with the most pungent vinegar, and heat it until it thickens, taking absolute care lest the vinegar volatilize into smoke and dissipate. Sustain this coction for 150 days. Now, therefore, I have elucidated the disposition of the white lead. All that ensues is no more than women's work and child's play. Furthermore, recognize that the arcanum of the work of gold originates from the male and the female, however. I have revealed the male unto you within the lead, just as I have similarly disclosed the female unto you within the orpiment. Therefore, intermingle the orpiment with the lead, for the female rejoices in receiving the vigor of the male, being sustained by him. Conversely, the male receives a tinging spirit from the female. Commingle them accordingly, placing the mixture within a glass vessel, and triturate it with Athelia and exceptionally sharp vinegar. Heat this for 7 days, remaining vigilant lest the arcanum dissipate in smoke, and allow it to rest throughout the night. If, however, you desire it to assume the hue of mud, considering it is already dry, imbue it once more with vinegar. Now, therefore, I have made known unto you the virtue of orpiment, which represents the woman through whom the greatest arcanum is achieved. Do not reveal these mysteries unto the wicked, for they shall merely scoff. It is the Athelia of vinegar that is introduced into the preparation, through which God perfects the work, and whereby spirits seize possession of bodies, thereby rendering them spiritual. The 17th dictum. Zimon declares, O Turba of philosophers and disciples, you have now discoursed upon the process of whitening, yet the treatment of the reddening remains. Know, all you who pursue this art, that unless you whiten, you cannot render red, for the two natures are nothing other than the red and the white. Whiten therefore the red and redden the white. Understand, furthermore, that the year is partitioned into 4 seasons. The first season possesses a frigid complexion, and this is winter. The second possesses the complexion of air, and this is spring. Then follows the third, which is summer, possessing the complexion of fire. Lastly, there is the fourth, wherein fruits reach maturity, which is autumn. In this manner, therefore, you must govern your natures, namely, to dissolve the ill winter, to decoct in spring, to coagulate in summer, and to harvest and tinge the fruit in autumn. Having presented this paradigm, govern the tinging natures accordingly. Should you err, cast blame upon none save yourselves. The Turba responds, You have expounded upon the matter exceptionally well. Append, therefore, a further teaching of this nature for the benefit of posterity. And he replies, I shall speak of the reddening of lead. Take the copper that the master commanded you to employ at the inception of his book, amalgamate lead with it, and heat the mixture until it thickens, congeal and desiccate it, until it assumes a red hue. Herein, assuredly, lies the red lead of which the wise have spoken. Copper and lead are forged into a precious stone. Commingle them in equal measure, and allow gold to be roasted alongside them. For this, if governed adeptly, becomes a tinging spirit amidst spirits. Thus, when the male and the female are conjoined, what is brought forth is not a volatile wife, but a spiritual composite. From this composite, once transmuted into a red spirit, the foundation of the world is generated. Behold, this is the lead we have designated red lead, which belongs to our work, and without which nothing can be achieved. The 18th dictum. Mundus addresses the Turba. The pursuers of this art must recognize that the philosophers have described gum in manifold ways within their treatises. Yet it is none other than permanent water, from which our precious stone is engendered. Oh, how numerous are those who seek this gum, and how exceedingly few are those who discover it. Understand that this gum cannot be ameliorated save by gold alone. There are vast numbers who investigate these applications and uncover certain principles, yet they are unable to sustain the labors because the substances diminish. Conversely, the applications derived from the gum and from the venerable stone, which has already received the tincture, do sustain the labors and are never diminished. Comprehend my words, therefore, for I shall elucidate the applications of this gum and the arcanum residing therein. Know that our gum is more potent than gold, and all who possess knowledge of it esteem it more highly than gold. Nevertheless, we also revere gold, for without it the gum cannot be perfected. To the philosophers, therefore, our gum is more precious and sublime than pearls, because with the gum and but a modicum of gold, we procure much. Consequently, when committing these matters to writing so that they might not perish, the philosophers refrained from detailing the manifest disposition in their books. They feared that everyone might become acquainted with it, and that having become familiar unto fools, it would not be sold for a modest price. Take, therefore, 1 part of the most intensely white gum, 1 part of the urine of a white calf, 1 part of the gall of a fish, and 1 part of the body of gum, without which it cannot be enhanced. Commingle these portions and subject them to coction for 40 days. Once this is accomplished, congeal the mixture by the heat of the sun until it is thoroughly dried. Next, heat the substance, intermixed with the milk of ferment, until the milk fails. Thereafter, extract it and evaporate the moisture through heat until it achieves absolute dryness. Subsequently, amalgamate it with the milk of the fig, heating it until that moisture is entirely desiccated within the composite, which you must afterwards mix with the milk of the root of grass, and boil it once more until dry. Proceed to moisten it with rainwater, then sprinkle it with the water of dew, and heat it until it is fully dried. Likewise imbue it with permanent water, and desiccate it until it reaches a state of the most profound dryness. Having executed these steps, combine the substance with the gum that is endowed with all manner of colors, and heat it vigorously until the entire force of the water perishes, and the whole body is bereft of its humidity. Continue to imbue it through boiling until its inherent dryness is kindled. Then set it aside for 40 days. Let it remain in that state of trituration or decoction until the spirit permeates the body. For by this regimen the spirit is rendered corporeal, and the body is transmuted into a spirit. Keep a watchful eye upon the vessel, therefore, lest the composition volatilize and dissipate into fumes. Upon the consummation of these procedures, open the vessel, and you shall discover that which you purposed. This, therefore, is the arcanum of the gum which the philosophers have concealed within their texts. The 19th dictum. Dardaris states, "It is common knowledge that the masters who preceded us have chronicled the permanent water. Now, it behooves anyone introduced to this art to attempt nothing until they are intimately familiar with the power of this permanent water. Moreover, in commixture, contrition, and throughout the entirety of the regimen, it is incumbent upon us to invariably employ this renowned permanent water. Therefore, he who lacks an understanding of the permanent water and its indispensable regimen must not enter into this art, because nothing is effected without the permanent water. Its force is that of a spiritual blood, whence the philosophers have named it permanent water. For, having pounded it with the body, Exactly as the masters before me have expounded unto you, it transforms that body into spirit by the will of God. For these, being commingled and reduced into a single essence, mutually transform one another. The body incorporates the spirit, and the spirit incorporates the body into a tinged spirit, akin to blood. Furthermore, know that whatsoever possesses spirit possesses blood as well. Remember, therefore, this arcanum, the 20th dictum. Belus declares, O disciples, you have discoursed most excellently. Pythagoras answers, seeing that they are philosophers, O Belus. Why have you designated them as disciples? He replies, it is in deference to their master, lest I should presume to render them equal with him. Then Pythagoras observes, those who, in conjunction with ourselves, have authored this volume which is called the Turba, ought not to be termed disciples. Then he responds, Master, they have frequently delineated permanent water, alongside the generation of the white and the red through diverse methods, albeit under a multitude of names, yet in the procedures by which they have united weights, compositions, and regimens, they remain in perfect accord with the hidden truth. Behold, what is spoken concerning this despised subject. A report has circulated that the hidden glory of the philosophers is simultaneously a stone and not a stone, and that it is concealed beneath a multitude of names, lest the foolish should recognize it. Certain wise men have designated it in one fashion, namely, according to the locale of its generation. Others have adopted an alternative nomenclature, founded upon its color, some of whom have termed it the green stone. By others, it is referred to as the stone of the most intense spirit of brass, which is not to be admixed with bodies. By yet others, its description has been further diversified, because it is sold for coin by lapidaries who are known as Savan. Some have named it the spume of Luna. Some have distinguished it astronomically or arithmetically. It has already received 1,000 titles, of which the most excellent is that which is produced out of metals. Likewise, others have proclaimed it the heart of the sun, and still others have declared it to be that which is brought forth from quicksilver with the milk of volatile substances. The 21st dictum. Pandolphus states, O Belus, you have discoursed so extensively concerning the despised stone that you have left nothing to be appended by your brethren. Nevertheless, I instruct posterity that this despised stone is a permanent water, and know, all you seekers of wisdom, that permanent water is the water of mundane life, because, verily, the philosophers have affirmed that nature rejoices in nature, nature contains nature, and nature overcomes nature. The philosophers have established this brief dictum as the fundamental principle of the work for all reasoning individuals, and know you that no body is more precious or purer than the sun, and that regarding the tinging venom, nothing is generated without the sun and its shadow. He, therefore, who endeavors to compound the venom of the philosophers without these prerequisites already errs, and is plunged into that abyss wherein his sorrow endures. Conversely, he who has tinged the venom of the wise from the sun and its shadow has attained the highest arcanum. Know also that our coin, when it reddens, is denominated gold. He, therefore, who comprehends the hidden camber of the philosophers, to him is the arcanum already revealed. The Turba answers, you have just now intelligibly described this stone, yet you have not delineated its regimen nor its composition. Return, therefore, to the exposition. He replies, I instruct you to take an occult and honorable arcanum, which is white magnesia, and the same is to be mixed and pounded with wine, but take care not to utilize this, unless it is perfectly pure and clean. Finally place it within its vessel, and pray to God that he may grant you the vision of this most magnificent stone. Then cook it gradually, and extracting it, observe whether it has become a black stone, in which case you have ruled it exceedingly well. Yet govern it thus for the white, which is a great arcanum, until it becomes kuhul, enveloped in blackness, which blackness ensure that it does not persist for longer than 40 days. Pound the same, therefore, with its confections, which consist of the aforementioned flour of copper, gold of the Indies whose root is singular, and a certain extract of an unguent, that is, of a crocus, that is, fixed and exalted alum. Cook these 4, therefore, permanently for 40 or 42 days. After these days God will reveal to you the principle of this stone, which is the stone Atidos, concerning which favored sight granted by God there are many accounts. Cook the substance vigorously, and imbue it with the gum that remains. Furthermore, know that as often as you imbue the cinder, equally as often must it be desiccated and humectated anew, until its color transforms into that which you desire. Now, therefore, I shall complete that which I have begun, provided God looks favorably upon us. Know also that the perfection of the work regarding this precious stone is to govern it with the residue of the third part of the medicine, and to preserve the other two parts for imbuing and cooking alternately till the requisite color manifests. Let the fire be more intense than the former, let the matter be serrated, and when it is desiccated it coheres. Cook, therefore, the wax until it imbibes the gluten of gold, which being desiccated, imbue the remainder of the work 7 times until the other 2/3 are exhausted, and the true earth has entirely imbibed them all. Finally, place the substance upon a hot fire until the earth extracts its flour and proves satisfactory. Blessed are you if you comprehend, but if not, I shall reiterate the perfection of the work for you. Take the pure white, which is a most profound arcanum, wherein resides the true tincture, imbue sand therewith, which sand is derived from the stone imbued 7 times, until it absorbs the whole, and close the mouth of the vessel securely, as you have frequently been instructed. For that which you seek from it by the grace of God will appear before you, which is the stone of Tyrian color. Now, therefore, I have fulfilled the truth, so do I adjure you by God, and by your steadfast Master, that you reveal not this great arcanum, and beware of the wicked. The 22nd dictum. Theophilus declares, You have spoken intelligently and elegantly, and are deemed free from envy. The Turba says, Let your discretion, therefore, elucidate for us what the instructing Pandolfus has articulated, and be not envious. Then he responds, O all you seekers of this science, the arcanum of gold and the art of the coin constitute a dark vestment, and no one can comprehend what the philosophers have recounted in their texts without frequent reading, rigorous experiments, and inquiries directed to the wise. For that which they have concealed is far more sublime and obscure than can possibly be conveyed through words, and albeit some have expounded upon it intelligibly and well, certain others have treated it with deliberate obscurity. Thus some prove far more lucid than their peers. The Turba answers, You have spoken the truth. And he continues, I declare to posterity that between Boretus and copper an affinity exists, because the Boretus of the wise liquefies, the copper consequently is altered, and it changes as a fluxible water. Divide, therefore, the venom into 2 equal parts, with one of which liquefy the copper, but preserve the other to pound and imbue the substance, until it is drawn out into plates. Cook it once more with the former portion of the venom, cooking 2 to 7 in 2. Cook it to 7 within its own water for 42 days. Finally, open the vessel, and you shall discover the copper transformed into quicksilver. Wash the same by cooking it until it is completely deprived of its blackness, and becomes as copper devoid of a shadow. Lastly, cook it continuously until it congeals, for when it is fully congealed it becomes a very great arcanum. Accordingly, the philosophers have named this stone Boretus, cook, therefore that coagulated stone until it reduces to a matter resembling mucra. Next, imbue it with the permanent water which I instructed you to reserve, that is to say, with the second portion, and cook it repeatedly until its colors vividly manifest. This, therefore, is the most profound putrefaction which extracts the very great arcanum. The Turba commands, Return to your exposition, O Theophilus, and he responds, It must be recognized that the same affinity which exists between the magnet and iron also exists assuredly between copper and permanent water. If therefore you govern the copper and permanent water precisely as I have directed, there will thence result the very great arcanum in the following fashion. Take white magnesia and quicksilver, mix them with the male principle, and pound them vigorously by means of cooking, not with the hands, until the water becomes exceedingly thin. However, upon dividing this water into 2 portions, cook the substance in the first portion of the water for 11, or alternatively, 40 days, until a white flower manifests, akin to the flower of salt in its radiant splendor and coruscation. Yet you must seal the mouth of the vessel firmly, and cook it for 40 days, at which time you shall discover a water whiter than milk, eradicate all blackness from it through decoction. Sustain this cooking until its entire nature is dissolved, until all defilement perishes, until it is found immaculate, and is entirely fractured. If, however, you desire that the entire arcanum, which I have imparted to you, be consummated, wash the substance with water, that is to say, with the second portion that I counseled you to retain, until a crocus appears, and allow it to remain within its proper vessel. For the elixir triturates itself, imbue it furthermore with the residual water, until by decoction and by water it is reduced and assumes the consistency of a syrup of pomegranates. Permeate it, therefore, and cook, until the burden of humidity shall fail, and the hue that the philosophers have so exalted shall unmistakably manifest. The 23rd dictum. Cyrus speaks, comprehend, all you sons of the doctrine, that which Theophilus has conveyed unto you, namely, that an affinity exists between the magnet and the iron, established by the composite alliance subsisting between the magnet and the iron, whereas copper is properly governed for 100 days. What declaration could prove more advantageous to you than the knowledge that there is no affinity between tin and quicksilver? The Turba replies, You have spoken poorly, having disparaged the true disposition. And he answers, I testify that I utter nothing but what is true. Why are you so incensed against me? Fear the Lord, all you members of the Turba, so that your master may place his faith in you. The Turba answers, Speak as you will. And he continues, I instruct you to take quicksilver, wherein resides the masculine potency or strength. Cook it with its body until it transforms into a fluxible water. Cook the masculine principle together with the vapor until both shall be coagulated and solidify into a stone. Subsequently, take the water that you had previously divided into 2 portions, of which the first serves for liquefying and cooking the body, while the second is intended for cleansing that which has already been burned, alongside its companion, which 2 are thus rendered into 1. Imbue the stone 7 times and purify it until it disintegrates, and its body is purged of all defilement and becomes earth. Know also that over a duration of 42 days the entirety is transmuted into earth. Through cooking, therefore, liquefy this substance until it becomes as true water, which is quicksilver. Following this, wash it with the water of nitre until it resembles a liquefied coin. Thereafter cook the matter until it congeals and assumes the likeness of tin, at which juncture it constitutes a most profound arcanum, that is to say, the stone derived from 2 distinct entities. Govern this substance through decoction and trituration until it is reduced to a most excellent crocus. Acknowledge further that to the water desiccated with its companion we have assigned the name of crocus. Cook it, therefore, and imbue it with the residual water reserved by you until you attain your ultimate purpose. The 24th dictum. Bocascus states, You have spoken well, O Belus, and therefore I shall follow in your footsteps. He answers, Proceed as it pleases you, yet do not succumb to envy, for such is not the disposition of the wise. And Bocascus replies, You speak the truth, and it is in this manner therefore that I instruct the sons of the doctrine. Procure lead, and, just as the philosophers have ordained, imbue, liquefy, and subsequently congeal it, until a stone is brought forth thereafter. Govern the stone with the gluten of gold and the syrup of pomegranates until it is completely broken apart. However, you have already divided the water into 2 portions, with the first of which you have liquefied the lead, and it has become as water. Cook, therefore, this same substance until it is desiccated and has been reduced to earth. Subsequently, triturate it with the reserved water until it acquires a crimson hue, exactly as you have been frequently commanded. The Turba responds, You have accomplished nothing save for the accumulation of ambiguous words. Return, therefore, to the matter at hand. And he replies, Those among you who desire to coagulate quicksilver must mingle it with its equal measure. Subsequently, cook it with great diligence until both elements transition into a permanent water, and once more cook this water until it achieves coagulation. Yet let this be desiccated with an equal measure of its own vapor, for you have discovered that the entirety of the quicksilver coagulates of its own accord. If you comprehend this principle, and place within your vessel that which is required, cook the substance until it is coagulated, and then triturate it until it becomes a crocus, akin to the color of gold. The 25th dictum. Menabdus speaks, May God reward you for this regimen, since you utter the truth, for you have brought profound illumination to your words. And they reply, It is declared that because you praise him for his pronouncements, you must not prove yourself inferior to him. And he answers, I know that I can articulate nothing beyond what he has already spoken. Nevertheless, I counsel posterity to render bodies incorporeal, and conversely, to give these incorporeal entities the form of bodies. For it is by means of this regimen that the composite is prepared, and the concealed aspect of its nature is successfully extracted. With these bodies accordingly unite the quicksilver and the body of magnesia, joining the woman also with the man. And by means of this union there is drawn forth our secret ethelia, through which all bodies receive their tincture assuredly. If I truly comprehend this regimen, bodies are rendered incorporeal, and incorporeal things are granted form as bodies. If you diligently triturate these substances within the fire and digest the aethelius, they shall become immaculate and fixed entities. Furthermore, understand that quicksilver is a fire that burns the bodies, mortifying and rupturing them, under a single regimen, and the more intricately it is mixed and triturated with the body, the further the body is disintegrated, whereas the quicksilver is attenuated and thereby rendered living. For when you diligently triturate the fiery quicksilver and cook it as prescribed, you shall possess ethyl, a fixed nature and hue receptive to every tincture, which simultaneously overcomes, fractures, and constrains the fire. For this reason it does not impart color to other things unless it is first colored itself, and being thus colored it tinges. Know also that no body can tinge itself, unless its spirit is first extracted from its secret belly thereof, at which point it becomes a body and soul devoid of the spirit. This being a spiritual tincture, from which colors are made manifest, given that a dense substance cannot tinge a tenuous one, but rather a tenuous nature imparts color to that which enters into a body. When, however, you have properly governed the body of copper, and have extracted from it a most tenuous, then this latter element is transmuted into a tincture by which it is colored. Hence the wise man has declared that copper does not tinge unless it has first been tinged itself. Recognize, moreover, that those 4 bodies which you are instructed to govern constitute this very copper, and that the tinctures which I have signified to you are the condensed and the humid, but the condensed is a conjoined vapor, and the humid is the water of sulfur. For sulfurs are contained by their fellow sulfurs, and it is fittingly through these elements that nature rejoices in nature, and overcomes and constrains. The 26th dictum. Zenon speaks, I perceive that you, O assembly of the wise, have conjoined 2 bodies, an act which your master by no means commanded you to perform. The Turba replies, enlighten us according to your own judgment, O Zenon, in this matter, and beware the snare of envy. He then states, know that the colors which shall emerge for you from this process are these. Understand, O sons of the doctrine, that it behooves you to permit the composition to putrefy for 40 days, and subsequently to sublimate it 5 times within a vessel. Next, subject the composition to a fire of dung, and cook it, whereupon these colors shall present themselves to you. On the first day, blackish citron; on the second, blackish red; on the third, a hue resembling a dry crocus; and finally, the purple color will become visible to you. The ferment and the coin of the vulgar shall then be introduced. At this stage, the elixir is composed from both the humid and the dry, and then it tinges with an invariable tincture. Be aware also that any substance wherein there is gold is denominated a body. However, when you are compounding the elixir, beware lest you extract it too hastily, for its process lingers. Extract it, therefore, purely as an elixir. For this venom constitutes, as it were, both birth and life, inasmuch as it is a soul extracted from a multitude of things, and subsequently imposed upon coins. Its tincture, therefore, imparts life unto those elements with which it is conjoined, purging them of impurity, while proving fatal to the bodies from which it is drawn. Accordingly, the masters have averred that between them there exists a desire akin to that which binds male and female, and should anyone, having been initiated into this art, comprehend these natures, he would patiently endure the tedium of the cooking process, until he achieved his design in accordance with the will of God. The 27th dictum. Gregorius declares, O all ye Turba, it must be observed that the envious have denominated the venerable stone Ephlucidinus, and they have decreed that it be governed until it coruscates with a splendor akin to marble. And they reply, demonstrate therefore its nature unto posterity. Then he responds, willingly, you must understand that the copper is commingled with vinegar, and governed until it is transmuted into water. Ultimately, let it be congealed, and it shall remain a coruscating stone possessing a brilliancy akin to marble, which, when ye behold it thus, I instruct you to govern, until it turns red. For when it is cooked until it disintegrates and becomes earth, it is transmuted into a crimson hue. When ye perceive it thus, repeatedly cook and imbue it until it assumes the aforementioned color, and it shall manifest as hidden gold. Thereafter reiterate the procedure, whereupon it shall become gold of a Tyrian hue. It behoves you, therefore, O all ye investigators of this art, upon observing that this stone is coruscating, to triturate it and reduce it to earth until it acquires a certain degree of redness. Subsequently, take the remainder of the water which the envious commanded you to divide into 2 portions, and ye shall imbibe them on several occasions, until the colors, which are concealed by no body, reveal themselves unto you. Be aware, furthermore, that if ye govern it in ignorance, ye shall behold none of those colors. I was acquainted with a certain individual who initiated this undertaking and manipulated the natures of truth. When the redness proved somewhat dilatory in its appearance, he surmised that he had committed an error, and consequently abandoned the endeavor. Observe, therefore, how ye effect the conjunction, for the Punic dye, having embraced his spouse, permeates swiftly into her body, liquefying, congealing, fracturing, and disintegrating it. Ultimately, the redness shall not be delayed in its arrival, and if ye accomplish this without the proper weight, death shall ensue, whereupon the result shall be deemed deleterious. Hence, I decree that the fire must be gentle during liquefaction, however, when the substance is reduced to earth. Intensify the flame and imbue it until God shall extract the colors for us, and they become manifest. The 28th dictum. Custos declares, I am astonished, O all ye Turba, at the prodigious force and nature of this water, for once it has penetrated the aforementioned body, it reduces it first to earth, and subsequently to powder. To verify the perfection of which, take it in your hand, and should you find it as impalpable as water, it is then most excellent. Otherwise, reiterate the cooking until it attains the requisite condition. Furthermore, be advised that should ye employ any substance other than our copper, and govern it with our water, it shall profit you nothing. If conversely ye govern our copper with our water, ye shall discover all that has been promised by us. But the Turba replies, Father, the envious engendered no small measure of obscurity when they commanded us to take lead and white quicksilver, and to govern them with dew and the sun until they became a coin-like stone. Then he responds, they referred to our copper and our permanent water, when they thus instructed you to cook over a gentle flame, and affirmed that the aforementioned coin-like stone should be produced, concerning which the wise have likewise observed that nature rejoices in nature, by virtue of the affinity they know to exist between the two bodies, that is to say, copper and permanent water. Therefore, the nature of these twain is singular, for between them resides a commingled affinity, lacking which they would not so swiftly unite, nor be so firmly bound together as to become one. The Turba inquires, Why do the envious direct us to take the copper which we have newly fashioned, and roast it until it has become gold? The 29th dictum. Diomedes states, Thou hast spoken already, O Moses Custos. In an ungrudging manner, as befits thee, I shall likewise corroborate thy words, passing over the obstinacy of the elements which the wise desire to eradicate, for this disposition is most precious in their sight. Know, O ye seekers of this doctrine, that man doth not proceed save from a man, that only which is similar unto themselves is begotten by brute animals, and thus it is also with flying creatures. I have addressed these matters in a compendious fashion, elevating you toward the truth, ye who yourselves eschew prolixity. For nature is truly not perfected by nature, save through her own inherent nature, just as thou thyself art not perfected, except in thy Son, which is to say, man in man. Ensure, therefore, that ye do not neglect the precepts pertaining to her, but rather make use of venerable nature, for from her doth art emerge, and from no other. Be aware, moreover, that unless ye lay hold of this nature and govern it, ye shall obtain nothing. Join, therefore, that male, who is the son of the red slave, in matrimony with his fragrant spouse. This having been accomplished, art is engendered between them. Add no foreign matter unto these elements, neither powder nor any other substance. That conception alone suffices for us, for it is near, yet the sun is nearer still. How exceedingly precious is the nature of that red slave, lacking which the regimen cannot endure. Baxen declares, O Diomedes, thou hast publicly disclosed this disposition. He replies, I shall shed even greater light upon it. Woe unto you who do not fear God, for he may deprive you of this art. Wherefore, then, are ye envious toward your brethren? They answer, We flee from none save fools. Declare unto us, therefore, what is thy will. And he responds, Place citrine alongside his wife following their conjunction into the bath. Do not heat the bath excessively, lest they be bereft of sense and motion. Cause them to remain within the bath until their body, and the hue thereof, attain a certain unity, whereupon you must restore unto it its own sweat. Suffer it once more to die, then grant it rest, and beware lest ye evaporate them by scorching them in too fierce a fire. Venerate the king and his wife, and do not incinerate them, since ye know not when ye may have need of these elements, which serve to perfect the king and his wife. Cook them, therefore, until they turn black, then white, subsequently red, and finally until a tinging venom is generated. O seekers of this science, fortunate are ye if ye comprehend. Yet if ye do not, I have nevertheless fulfilled my duty, and done so with brevity, such that if ye remain ignorant, it is God who hath concealed the truth from you. Blame not, therefore, the wise, but rather yourselves, for had God known that ye possessed a faithful mind, most assuredly he would have revealed the truth unto you. Behold, I have established you therein, and have extricated you from error. The 30th dictum. Baxen declares, Thou hast spoken eloquently, O Diomedes, yet I do not perceive that thou hast demonstrated the disposition of Corsiphal unto posterity. Concerning this very Corsiphal, the envious have spoken in multifarious ways, and have obfuscated it with all manner of appellations. Then he responds, Instruct me therefore, O Baxen, according to thy judgment in these matters, and I swear by thy father that this is the head of the work, for the true commencement hereof arrives following its completion. Baxen states, I give notice, therefore, unto future seekers of this art, that Corsiphal is a composite, and that it must be roasted 7 times, for when it achieves perfection, it tinges the entirety of the body. The Turba replies, Thou hast spoken the truth, O Baxen, the 31st dictum. Pythagoras inquires, How doth the discourse of Baxen appear unto you, given that he hath omitted to designate the substance by its artificial appellations? And they reply, Name it, therefore, O Pythagoras. And he, since Corsiphal is its composition, they have bestowed upon it all the names of the bodies within the world, such as, for instance, those of coin, copper, tin, gold, iron, and likewise the appellation of lid, until it be stripped of that color and become ixer. The Turba Answorth, Thou hast spoken excellently, O Pythagoras. And he, ye have also spoken astutely, and certain among the others may now discourse concerning the residual matters. The 32nd dictum. Bonellus saith, According unto thee, O Pythagoras, all things perish and live by the will of God, for that nature from which the humidity is withdrawn, that nature which is abandoned through the nights, doth indeed appear akin to something deceased. It is subsequently turned and left once more for certain nights, much as a man is left within his tomb, whereupon it is reduced to a powder. These processes having been accomplished, God shall restore unto it both its soul and its spirit, the frailty having been removed, that matter shall be rendered robust, and following its corruption, it shall be perfected, even as a man becomes mightier after his resurrection, and more youthful than he was in this world. Therefore it behoves you, O ye sons of the doctrine, to consume that matter with fire courageously until it is reduced to a cinder. Know then that ye have commingled it exceptionally well, for that cinder receives the spirit, and is permeated with the humor until it assumes a fairer hue than it formerly possessed. Consider, therefore, O ye sons of the doctrine, that artists are incapable of painting with their own tinctures until they have converted them into a powder. Similarly, the philosophers cannot compound medicines for ailing slaves until they likewise reduce them to powder, calcining some to a cinder, while others they triturate with their hands. The case remains identical for those who fashion the images of the ancients. Yet if ye comprehend what hath already been declared, ye shall know that I speak the truth. Hence, I have commanded you to incinerate the body and reduce it to a cinder. For if ye govern it with subtlety, manifold things shall proceed from it, even as abundance springs from the most minuscule things in the world. It is thus because copper, much like man, possesses both a body and a soul. The respiration of men cometh from the air, which after God constitutes their life, and similarly the copper is inspired by the humor from which that very copper, receiving strength, is multiplied and augmented like all other things. Hence, the philosophers add that when copper is consumed by fire and the process iterated several times, it becomes vastly superior to its former state. The Turba Answorth demonstrate, therefore, O Bonellus, unto future generations after what manner it becometh better than it was. And he, I shall do so most willingly. It is because it is augmented and multiplied, and because God extracts a multitude of things from a single substance, since he hath created nothing that lacks its proper regimen, and those qualities by which its healing must be effected. Similarly, our copper, when first it is cooked, is transformed into water. Thereafter, the more it is cooked, the more it thickens until it becomes a stone, as the envious have designated it. Yet it is in truth an egg tending toward the state of a metal. It is subsequently fractured and imbued, whereupon you must roast it in a fire more intense than the former, until it shall be imbued with color and become like blood in combustion, at which point it is cast upon coins and transmutes them into gold, in accordance with the divine pleasure. Do you not observe that sperm is not generated from the blood, unless it be diligently cooked within the liver, until it hath acquired an intensely red hue, following which no further mutation takes place within that sperm? It is identical with our work, for unless it be diligently cooked until it becomes a powder, and subsequently putrefied until it becomes a spiritual sperm, there shall in no wise proceed from it that color which ye desire. Yet, if ye attain the conclusion of this regimen, and thereby achieve your purpose, ye shall be as princes among the people of your era. The 33rd dictum. Nicholas saith, Now ye have rendered this arcanum public. The Turba Answorth thus did the master command, and he, nevertheless, not the entirety. But he commanded us to clear away the darkness therefrom. Do thou therefore enlighten us. And I counsel posterity to take the gold which they desire to multiply and renovate, and thereafter to divide the water into 2 portions. And they distinguish therefore the moment when they must divide the water. But it behoves them to incinerate our copper with 1 portion. For the aforementioned copper, dissolved in that water, is termed the ferment of gold, provided ye govern the operation well. For they are similarly cooked and do liquefy as water. Ultimately, through continued cooking, they are congealed, they crumble, and the red manifests. But then it behoves you to imbue them 7 times over with the residual water, until they absorb the entirety of the liquid. Once all the moisture hath been desiccated, they are converted into dry earth. Then kindle a fire, and place the matter therein for 40 days, until the whole shall putrefy and its colors become apparent. The 34th dictum. Baxen saith, On account of thy dicta, the philosophers have urged caution. Take the regal cornstone, which is akin to the redness of copper, and triturate it in the urine of a calf, until the nature of the cornstone is transmuted, for its true nature hath been concealed within the belly of the cornstone. The Turba saith, Expound unto posterity what this nature is, and it is a tinging spirit derived from permanent water, which is reminiscent of a coin, and doth coruscate. And they demonstrate therefore how it is extracted. And it is triturated, and water is poured upon it 7 times until it absorbs the entire humor, thereby receiving a force equal to the hostility of the fire. At this juncture it is called rust. Putrefy the same with diligence until it becomes a spiritual powder, bearing a hue akin to burnt blood, which the vanquishing fire hath introduced into the receptive belly of nature, coloring it with an indelible tint. This therefore kings have sought, yet failed to find, save only those to whom God hath granted it. But the Turba saith, Conclude thy discourse, O Baxen. And I direct them to whiten copper using white water, by means of which they also produce the red. Take heed not to introduce any foreign substance. And the Turba, Excellently hast thou spoken, O Baxen, and Nictimorus hath also spoken well. Then if I have spoken well, let one among you proceed. The 35th dictum. But Zimon saith, Hast thou left aught to be articulated by another? And the Turba, since the words of Nicholas and Baxen are of little utility to those who seek after this art, tell us, therefore, what thou knowest, in accordance with what we have declared. And ye speak the truth, O all ye seekers after this art. Naught else hath led you into error save the utterings of the envious. For that which ye seek is sold at the most trifling of prices. If men but knew this, and recognized how great a thing they held within their hands, they would in no wise part with it. Therefore the philosophers have glorified that venom, have treated of it in diverse manners, and in many ways, having taken and applied to it all manner of appellations. Wherefore certain envious individuals have declared, It is a stone, and yet not a stone, but rather a gum of a Scotia, consequently. The philosophers have concealed its true potency. For this spirit which ye seek, that ye may tinge therewith, is concealed within the body and hidden from sight, even as the soul resides within the human body. Yet, ye seekers of the art, unless ye disintegrate this body, imbue and triturate it both cautiously and diligently, until ye extract it from its grossness, and transmute it into a tenuous and impalpable spirit, your labor shall be entirely in vain. Wherefore the philosophers have proclaimed, Unless ye transform bodies into non-bodies, and incorporeal things into bodies, ye have not yet discovered the rule of operation. But the Turba saith, Instruct posterity, therefore, upon how bodies are transformed into non-bodies. And they are triturated with fire and athelia until they are reduced to a powder. Furthermore, understand that this process is achieved exclusively through a profoundly intense decoction and continuous contrition, executed not by manual means, but with a moderate fire via imbibition and putrefaction, alongside exposure to the sun, and to Athelia. The envious have led the uninitiated astray in this art by declaring that the substance is inherently common and available for a meager sum. They additionally claimed that this nature is more precious than all others, thereby deceiving those who sought guidance from their treatises. Yet simultaneously they spoke the truth, therefore, harbor no doubts regarding these matters. The Turba responds, seeing that you place faith in the assertions of the envious, elucidate, therefore, the disposition of the two natures for the benefit of posterity. And I attest to you that the art necessitates two natures, for the precious cannot be generated without the common, nor the common without the precious. It behooves you, therefore, O investigators of this art, to heed the words of Victomerus, who instructed his disciples thus, "Nothing shall aid you save the sublimation of water and vapor." And the Turba, the entirety of the work resides in the vapor and the sublimation of water. Demonstrate, therefore, the disposition of the vapor unto them. And when you observe that the natures have transmuted into water by virtue of the fire's heat, that they have been thoroughly purified, and that the entire body of magnesia is liquefied like water, then all things have been rightfully converted into vapor. At that juncture the vapor encompasses its own equal, wherefore the envious refer to either as vapor, because both are united in decoction and one contains the other. Consequently, our stag finds no avenue of escape, even though flight is essential to its nature. One element restrains the other, depriving it of any opportunity or refuge for flight. Hence, all are rendered permanent. For when the one descends, remaining concealed within the body, it congeals alongside it and its color fluctuates, extracting its nature from the properties that God has instilled within his elect, alienating it lest it flee. However, blackness and redness subsequently emerge, and it succumbs to affliction, perishing through rust and putrefaction. Strictly speaking, therefore, it does not truly possess flight, despite its profound desire to escape such servitude. Yet, upon attaining freedom, it follows its spouse, so that a favorable hue might befall both itself and its consort. Its former beauty is altered, but when placed alongside mere coins, it transmutes them into gold. It is for this very reason that the philosophers have designated both the spirit and the soul as vapor. They have similarly termed it the black humidity lacking ablution, and inasmuch as both moisture and dryness reside within man, our work, which the envious have so fiercely concealed, is fundamentally nothing else but vapor and water. The Turba responds, demonstrate this vapor and water, and I declare that the work derives from two principles. The envious have described it as being composed of two, because these two ultimately become four, encompassing dryness and humidity, spirit and vapor. The Turba responds, you have spoken most excellently and without envy. Let Zimon follow next. The 36th dictum. Afflantus, the philosopher, states, I proclaim to you all, O investigators of this art, that unless you sublime the substances at the very commencement through decoction, devoid of manual contrition, until the entirety is reduced to water, you have not yet discovered the work. Be advised that copper was formerly referred to as sand, yet by others as stone, and indeed the nomenclature varies with every regimen. Understand further that the nature and humidity transform into water, and subsequently into a stone, provided you ensure they are properly complexioned, and possess a thorough acquaintance with these natures, because the light and spiritual portion ascends to the summit, whereas the dense and heavy remainder settles at the bottom of the vessel. This, then, constitutes the contrition of the philosophers, namely, that which fails to sublimate sinks downward, while that which is converted into a spiritual powder ascends to the top of the vessel. And this is the contrition achieved by decoction, not by manual labor. Furthermore, recognize that unless you have reduced everything to powder, you have not yet pulverized the matter completely. Therefore, continuously subject them to heat until they are fully converted into a powder. For this reason, Agadaimon instructs, cook the copper until it becomes a delicate and impalpable body, and enclose it within its own vessel then, sublimate it 6 or 7 times until the water descends. Know, moreover, that when the water has been reduced to powder, it has been diligently ground. But should you inquire how water is transformed into a powder, observe that the intention of the philosophers is that the body, which is not water before it falls into the water, may become water. This newly formed water is then mingled with the original water, and they fuse into a single, unified liquid. It must be stated, therefore, that unless you transmute the specified substance into water, you shall not achieve the work. Consequently, it is imperative for the body to be so thoroughly permeated by the flame of the fire that it disintegrates, becoming weakened by the water, when the water has been added to the water, until the entirety is rendered into water. However, fools, upon hearing the term water, presume it to be the water of the clouds. Had they studied our treatises, they would understand that it is permanent water, which cannot achieve permanence without its companion, with which it is made one. This is the very water that the philosophers have designated the water of gold, the igneous, the good venom, and that sand of many names which Hermes commanded to be washed frequently, so that the blackness of the sun, which he introduced during the solution of the body, might be entirely removed. Furthermore, know this, all you seekers of this art, that unless you take this pure body, that is our copper devoid of the spirit, you shall by no means behold that which you desire, for no foreign substance may enter therein, nor does anything enter, unless it is absolutely pure. Therefore, all you investigators of this art, dismiss the multitude of obscure names, for the nature is a single water. Should anyone err, he draws near to destruction and forfeits his life. Preserve, therefore, this singular nature, and discard all that is foreign. The 37th dictum. Bonella states, I shall speak briefly concerning magnesia. The Turba responds, Speak. And he, O sons of the doctrine, when mixing magnesia, place it within its vessel, seal the mouth meticulously, and subject it to a gentle fire until it liquefies, and all within becomes water. For as the heat of the water acts upon it, it is transformed into water by the will of God. When you observe that the aforementioned water is on the verge of turning black, you shall know that the body has already liquefied. Return it to its vessel, and cook it for 40 days, until it fully absorbs the moisture of the vinegar and honey. Although certain individuals may uncover it, perhaps once each week, or once every 10 nights, in either scenario, the ultimate perfection of the pure water manifests at the conclusion of 40 days, for it is then that it completely absorbs the humor of the decoction. Therefore, wash the substance and divest it of its blackness, until once the blackness is entirely removed, the stone becomes dry to the touch. Hence, the envious have stated, wash the magnesia with soft water, and cook it diligently until it is reduced to earth and the humor perishes. At this stage it is designated as copper. Subsequently, pour exceedingly sharp vinegar over it, and allow it to steep therein. Yet this is our copper, which the philosophers have ordained must be washed with permanent water. For this reason they have commanded, let the venom be divided into 2 parts, with one of which you shall burn up the body, and with the other cause it to putrefy. And recognize, all you seekers of this science, that the entirety of the work and regimen is accomplished exclusively through water. Wherefore, they declare that the object of your search is singular, and, unless the element that refines it is present within this very substance, that which you seek shall in no way come to fruition. Therefore it behooves you to incorporate those things which are necessary, so that you may thereby attain your intended purpose. The Turba responds, You have spoken most excellently, O Bonellus. If it pleases you, therefore conclude that which you are saying, otherwise repeat it a second time. To this he responded, Shall I indeed reiterate these and similar instructions? O all you investigators of this art, take our copper, place it with the first portion of the water into the vessel, decoct it for 40 days, purify it from all impurities, and continue the decoction until its appointed days are fulfilled, and it becomes a stone devoid of moisture. Subsequently, heat it until nothing remains but the dregs. Once this is accomplished, cleanse it 7 times, wash it with water, and when the water is entirely consumed, allow it to putrefy within its vessel for as long as deemed appropriate for your purpose. However, the envious have referred to this composition, once it has transitioned into blackness, as that which is sufficiently black, decreeing, govern this substance with vinegar and nitre. Conversely, that which remained upon being whitened, they pronounced sufficiently white, ordaining that it should be governed by permanent water. Furthermore, when they declared it sufficiently red, they commanded that it be governed by water and fire, until its redness was fully realized. The Turba answered, Reveal to posterity what they intended by such pronouncements, and he replied, They called it ixir satis, owing to the variation of its colors. Within the great work, however, there exists neither variety, multiplicity, nor opposition of substances. It is necessary only to render the black copper white, and subsequently red. Nevertheless, the truth-speaking philosophers held no intention other than liquefying, pulverizing, and decocting the ixir until the stone achieved a splendor akin to marble. Accordingly, the envious stated once more, Decoct the same with vapor until the stone becomes coruscant by virtue of its brilliance. Yet when you behold it thus, it is indeed the supreme arcanum. Notwithstanding, you must then pulverize and wash it 7 times with permanent water. Finally, pulverize it once more and allow it to congeal in its own water, until you extract its concealed nature. Wherefore Maria states, sulfurs are contained within sulfurs, and humor within Aachen humor. Thus, from sulfur mixed with sulfur, a great work emerges. Yet I ordain that you govern the same with dew and the sun, until your purpose is made manifest to you. For I declare to you that there exist 2 methods of whitening and of reddening, whereof one consists in rusting, and the other in contrition and decoction. However, you require no contrition by human hands. Beware, however, of separating it from the waters, lest the poisons afflict you, and the body perish alongside the other contents of the vessel. The 38th dictum. Hephaestus said, "You have spoken most excellently, O Bonelus, and I bear witness to all your words." The Turba replied, "Tell us whether there is utility in the speech of Bonelus, so that those initiated into this practice may grow more bold and certain." Hephaestus said, "Consider, all you investigators of this art, how Hermes, chief among the philosophers, spoke and demonstrated when he desired to mingle the natures. Take, he instructs us, the stone of gold, combine it with the humor that is permanent water, and set it within its vessel over a gentle fire until liquefaction occurs. Then, leave it until the water evaporates, and the sand and water are entirely integrated with one another. Subsequently, let the fire be made more intense than before, until the mixture becomes dry once more and is transformed into earth. When this is accomplished, understand that herein lies the beginning of the arcanum, yet repeat this process multiple times, until 2/3 of the water is consumed, and the colors manifest before you." The Turba answered, "You have spoken excellently, O Hephaestus, yet instruct us further in brief." And he replied, "I testify to posterity that the dealbation does not occur save by means of decoction. Consequently, Agamemnon has very aptly discussed the decocting, pulverizing, and imbuing of Athelia. Yet I instruct you not to pour all of the water at once, lest the elixir be submerged. Rather pour it gradually, pulverize and desiccate, repeating this several times until the water is entirely exhausted. Now, concerning this, the envious have stated, leave the water once it has all been poured in, and it will sink to the bottom. However, their true intention is this: while the humor is drying, and once it has been reduced to a powder, leave it within its glass vessel for 40 days, until it transitions through the various colors that the philosophers have described. Through this method of decoction, the bodies assume their spirits and spiritual tinctures, and thus become warm." The Turba answered, "You have bestowed light upon us, O Hephaestus, and have performed excellently. Truly, you are purged of all envy, wherefore, let another among you speak as he pleases." The 39th dictum. Baxen said, "O all you seekers of this art, you can achieve no fruitful result without a patient, laborious, and solicitous soul, accompanied by persevering courage and a continuous regimen. Therefore, he who is willing to persevere in this practice, and who seeks to enjoy its results, may embark upon it. However, he who desires to learn with excessive haste must not have recourse to our books, for they impose profound labor before they may be understood in their higher sense, whether read once, twice, or thrice. Thus, the Master states, whoever bends his back to the study of our books, devoting his leisure to them, is not occupied with vain thoughts. Rather, he fears God, and shall undoubtedly reign within the kingdom until his death. For that which you seek is of no small price. Woe to you who seek the exceedingly great and rewarding treasure of God. Do you not know that for the most trivial purpose in the world, earthly men will surrender themselves to death? What therefore ought they to endure for this most excellent and near impossible offering? Now, the regimen is greater than can be comprehended by reason alone, save through divine inspiration. I once encountered an individual who was as intimately acquainted with the elements as I am myself, yet when he proceeded to govern this practice, he did not attain its joy, owing to his despondency and ignorance in its governance, as well as his excessive eagerness, desire, and haste regarding the ultimate purpose. Woe to you, sons of the doctrine! For he who plants trees does not look for fruit except in its proper season. Similarly, he who sows seeds does not expect to reap save at the time of harvest. How, then, can you desire to attain this offering when you have read but a single book, or have ventured only through the first regimen? The philosophers have stated explicitly that the truth cannot be discerned except through prior error, and nothing engenders greater anguish of heart than error in this art. For a man may imagine he possesses almost the entire world, only to find nothing in his hands. Woe to you! Comprehend the dictum of the philosopher, and observe how he delineated the work when he instructed. Pulverize, decoct, reiterate, and do not grow weary. Yet, in so dividing the work, he signified commingling, decocting, assimilating, roasting, heating, whitening, pulverizing, decocting athelia, generating rust or redness, and tinging. Here, therefore, are many names, yet there remains but a single regimen. If men understood that one decoction and a single contrition would suffice them, they would not reiterate their words so frequently as they have done. Moreover, it is to ensure that the mixed body is pulverized and decocted with utmost diligence, that they have admonished you not to grow weary of the task. Since they have obscured the matter before you with their phrasing, it suffices for me to speak in this direct manner. It is imperative to complexionate the venom correctly, then to decoct it numerous times, without growing weary of the decoction. Imbue and decoct it, until it becomes as I have ordained it should be governed by you, namely as impalpable spirits, and until you perceive that the elixir is clothed in the garment of the kingdom. For when you behold the elixir transformed into a Tyrian hue, you will have found that which the philosophers discovered before you. If you comprehend my words, they will forthwith elucidate any ambiguity that occurs herein. Read, therefore, repeatedly, for reading is a dead speech, but that which is uttered by the lips is living speech. Therefore, we have commanded you to read frequently, and furthermore to ponder diligently upon those matters which we have recounted. The 40th dictum. Jargus saith, Thou hast left obscure a portion of thy discourse, O Baxen. And he respondeth, Do thou therefore, Jargus, in thy clemency, elucidate the same. And he Answorth, The copper whereof thou hast previously spoken is neither copper nor the tin of the vulgar. It is our true work, which must be combined with the body of magnesia, so that it may be cooked and pulverized without fatigue until the stone is forged. Thereafter, that stone must be pounded within its vessel with the water of nitre, and subsequently reduced to liquefaction until it is destroyed. Yet, all ye investigators of this art, it is imperative to possess a water whereby the more ye cook, the more ye must sprinkle, until the aforementioned copper shall assume rust, which is the foundation of our work. Cook, therefore, and pulverize with Egyptian vinegar. The 41st dictum. Zymon saith, Whatsoever thou hast uttered, O Jargos, is true. Nevertheless, I do not perceive that the entirety of the Turba hath spoken concerning the rotundum. Then he Answorth, Speak therefore thine opinion concerning it, O Zymon. Zymon saith, I declare unto posterity that the rotundum transmuteth into 4 elements and is derived from a single thing. The Turba Answorth, inasmuch as thou art speaking, expound for future generations the method of governance. And he respondeth willingly, It is necessary to take 1 part of our copper, yet of permanent water, 3 parts, then let them be commingled and cooked until they are thickened and become a single stone, concerning which the envious have declared, Take 1 part of the pure body, and 3 parts of the copper of magnesia, then commingle them with rectified vinegar, mixed with the meal of earth, seal the vessel, observe that which is contained therein, and cook unceasingly until it becometh earth. The 42nd dictum. Ascanius saith, Excessive discourse, O all ye sons of the doctrine, leadeth this subject further into error. Yet, when ye read within the books of the philosophers that nature is but one, and that she overcomes all things, know that they are a single entity and a single composite. Do ye not perceive that the constitution of a man is formed from a soul and a body? Thus also must ye conjoin these, for when the philosophers prepared the matters in united spouses mutually enamoured of one another, behold, there ascended from them a golden water. The Turba Answorth, when thou wast treating of the first work, lo, thou didst pivot unto the second. How ambiguous hast thou rendered thy book, and how obscure are thy words? Then he replieth, I shall execute the arrangement of the first work. The Turba Answorth, do so. And he declareth, Incite a war between copper and quicksilver, until they fall to destruction and are corrupted, for when the copper conceives the quicksilver, it coagulates it. But when the quicksilver conceives the copper is congealed into earth. Stir up, therefore, a conflict between them, destroy the body of the copper until it is reduced to powder. Furthermore, conjoin the male to the female, which are vapor and quicksilver, until the male and the female become ethyl, for he who transmuteth them into spirit by means of ethyl, and subsequently reddens them, tingeth every body. This is because when through diligent cooking ye pound the body, ye extract therefrom a pure, spiritual, and sublime soul, which tingeth every body. The Turba answereth, Inform posterity, therefore, what that body may be. And he respondeth, It is a natural sulphureous substance which is designated by the names of all bodies. The 43rd dictum. Dardaris saith, Ye have frequently discoursed upon the regimen, and have introduced the conjunction. Nevertheless, I proclaim unto posterity that they cannot extract the presently hidden soul, except by athelia, whereby bodies cease to be bodies through continual cooking, and through the sublimation of athelia. Know also that quicksilver is fiery, burning every body more fiercely than doth fire, and mortifying bodies as well, and that every body which is commingled with it is ground down and surrendered to destruction. When therefore ye have diligently pounded the bodies and have exalted them as required, there is produced from them that ethyl nature and a colour which is tinging and non-volatile, and it tingeth the copper, which the Turba declared did not tinge, until it is itself tinged. For that which is tinged tingeth. Know also that the body of the copper is governed by magnesia, and that quicksilver comprises 4 bodies. Furthermore, that the matter possesses no being save through humidity, for it is the water of sulphur, inasmuch as sulphurs are contained within sulphurs. The Turba saith, O Dardaris, enlighten posterity as to what sulphurs are. And he answereth, Sulphurs are souls which are concealed within 4 bodies. When extracted by themselves, they contain one another and are naturally conjoined. For if ye govern that which is hidden within the belly of sulphur with water, and thoroughly cleanse that which is concealed, then nature rejoiceth, meeting with nature, and water similarly rejoiceth with its equal. Know ye also that the 4 bodies are not tinged, but rather they tinge. And the Turba inquireth, Why dost thou not declare, like the ancients, that when they are tinged, they tinge? And he replieth, I state that the 4 coins of the vulgar populace are not tinged, but rather they tinge copper, and when that copper is tinged, it tingeth the coins of the populace. The 44th dictum. Moises saith, This single thing of which thou hast spoken to us, O Dardaris, the philosophers have designated by many names, sometimes by 2 and sometimes by 3. Dardaris answereth, Name it, therefore, for posterity, setting aside all envy. And he respondeth, The first is that which is fiery, the second is the body composed within it, the third is the water of sulphur, with which it is also washed and governed until it is perfected. Do ye not perceive what the philosopher affirmeth, that the quicksilver which tingeth gold is quicksilver derived from camber? Dardaris answereth, What dost thou mean by this? For the philosopher states, sometimes from camber and sometimes from orpiment. And he replieth, Quicksilver of orpiment is the camber of magnesia, but quicksilver is the sulphur ascending from the mixed composite. Ye must therefore mingle that dense substance with fiery venom, putrefy it, and diligently pound it until a spirit is produced, which is concealed within that other spirit. Thereby is forged the tincture which is desired by you all. The 45th dictum. But Plato saith, It behoveth you all, O masters, when those bodies are undergoing dissolution, to take heed lest they be consumed by fire, and likewise to wash them with sea-water, until all their salt is transformed into sweetness, clarifies, tingeth, becometh the tincture of copper, and subsequently taketh flight. For it was necessary that one should become tinging, and that the other should be tinged, because the spirit, being separated from the body and concealed within the other spirit, causes both to become volatile. Therefore the wise have declared that the gate of flight must not be opened for that which would flee, by whose flight death is occasioned, for by the conversion of the sulphureous substance into a spirit like unto itself, either becometh volatile, since they are rendered aeriform spirits prone to ascend into the air. However, the philosophers, observing that which was non-volatile rendered volatile alongside the volatiles, iterated these into a body similar to the non-volatiles, and confined them wherein they could not escape. They iterated them into a body like unto the bodies from which they were extracted, and these same were then digested. Yet, regarding the statement of the philosopher that the tinging agent and that which is to be tinged are forged into a single tincture, it refers to a spirit concealed within another humid spirit. Know also that one of the humid spirits is cold, whilst the other is hot, and although the cold humid is not naturally adapted to the warm humid, they are nevertheless rendered as one. Therefore, we give precedence to these 2 bodies, for through them we govern the entirety of the great work, namely, regulating the corporeal by means of the incorporeal, until the incorporeal entities are rendered corporeal and remain steadfast within the fire. This is achieved because they are conjoined with volatile elements, a condition that is impossible to realize in any other body save for these. For spirits invariably flee from bodies, yet fugitive substances are restrained by the incorporeal. The incorporeal, therefore, similarly retreats from the corporeal. Consequently, those entities which do not flee are vastly superior and far more precious than all mere bodies. These operations having thus been accomplished, take those substances which are not volatile and unite them. Cleanse the body with the incorporeal until the incorporeal assumes a non-volatile form. Transmute the earth into water, the water into fire, and the fire into air. Then, conceal the fire within the abyssal depths of the water, and place the earth within the belly of the air, thereby commingling the hot with the humid and the cold with the dry. Know, moreover, that nature overcomes nature. Nature rejoices in nature, and nature contains nature. The 46th dictum. Adamus declares, "It must be noted that the entire assembly of the philosophers has frequently discoursed concerning rubigo. Rubigo, however, is a fictitious rather than a true appellation." The Turba responds, "Identify rubigo therefore by its true name, so that it may not be subject to calumny." And he replies, "Rubigo is intrinsic to the work, for it is derived from gold alone." The Turba answers, "Why then have the philosophers likened it unto the leech?" He answers, "Because water is concealed within sulphureous gold, just as the leech is hidden within water. Rubigo, therefore, represents rubfaction in the second phase of the work. Yet, to produce rubigo is to induce whitening in the preliminary phase, wherein the philosophers ordained that the flour of gold should be taken alongside an equal proportion of gold." The 47th dictum. Mundus declares, "Thou hast already discoursed sufficiently upon rubigo, O Atomus. I shall speak therefore of venom, and I will instruct future generations that venom is not a body, rather subtle spirits have reduced it to a tenuous spirit, having tinged the body and incinerated it with venom, a venom which, as the philosopher asserts, possesses the power to tinge every body. Furthermore, the ancient philosophers maintained that he who transmuted gold into venom had achieved the ultimate purpose, whereas he who fails in this endeavor profits nothing. Now I declare unto you, all ye sons of the doctrine, that unless you reduce the substance by fire until its elements ascend as a spirit, you shall accomplish naught. This, therefore, is a spirit that shuns the fire, manifesting as a ponderous smoke. When it enters the body, it penetrates it utterly and causes the body to rejoice. The philosophers have unanimously proclaimed, take a black and conjoining spirit, employ it to fracture the bodies, and subject them to torment until they are profoundly transformed." The 48th dictum. Pythagoras declares, "We must affirm unto all you seekers of this art, that the philosophers have treated the subject of conjunction in a multitude of ways. Yet I enjoin you to compel the quicksilver to constrain the body of magnesia, or the body of kuhul, or the spume of luna, or incombustible sulfur, or roasted calx, or the alum derived from apples, as you are well aware. However, if there existed a singular regimen for any of these substances, a philosopher would not explicitly disclose it, as you well know. Understand, therefore, that sulfur, calx, the alum derived from apples, and kuhul are all fundamentally nothing other than the water of sulfur. Know also that when magnesia is commingled with quicksilver and sulfur, they relentlessly pursue one another. Hence you must not discard this magnesia without the quicksilver. For when it is properly composed, it is termed an exceedingly potent composition, representing one of the 10 regimens established by the philosophers. Know, additionally, that when magnesia is whitened by means of quicksilver, you must congeal white water therein. Conversely, when it is reddened, you must congeal red water, for, as the philosophers have observed in their treatises, the regimen is not singular. Accordingly, the primary congelation involves tin, copper, and lead. The secondary congelation, however, is composed with the water of sulfur. Certain individuals, however, upon reading this book, presume that the composition may be purchased. It must be known with absolute certainty that no element of the work can be bought, and that the science of this art consists of nothing other than vapor and the sublimation of water, coupled with the conjunction of quicksilver within the body of magnesia. Yet, heretofore, the philosophers have demonstrated in their writings that the impure water of sulfur is derived from sulfur alone, and that no sulfur is produced without the water of its calx, along with quicksilver and sulfur." The 49th dictum. Belus declares, "O all ye philosophers, you have not spoken sparingly concerning composition and contact, yet composition, contact, and congelation are ultimately one and the same. Take, therefore, a portion from the first composition and a portion from the ferment of gold, and upon these superimpose the pure water of sulfur. This then constitutes the potent arcanum which tinges every body. Pythagoras responds, O Belus, why hast thou designated it a potent arcanum, yet failed to elucidate its workings? And he replies, In our volumes, O Master, we have discovered the very same teachings which thou hast received from the ancients. And Pythagoras, it is precisely for this reason that I have assembled you together, so that you might dispel any obscurities residing within those texts. And I shall do so willingly, O Master. It must be noted that the pure water derived from sulfur is not composed of sulfur alone, but rather of a multiplicity of elements, for the singular sulfur is forged from several sulfurs. How, therefore, O Master, shall I amalgamate these elements so that they may become one? And he answers, Mix, O Belus, that which contends with the fire with that which does not, for substances conjoined within a fire suitable to their nature will invariably strive together, just as the warm venoms of the physician are decocted over a gentle, incomburent fire. Surely you perceive what the philosophers have stated regarding decoction, that a meager amount of sulfur can incinerate many potent substances, and the humor which remains is termed humid pitch, balsam of gum, and other similar appellations. Therefore, our philosophers are rendered akin to physicians, notwithstanding the fact that the trials of the physicians are more intense than those of the philosophers. The Turba responds, I entreat you, O Belus, to demonstrate also the disposition of this potent arcanum. And I proclaim unto future generations that this arcanum proceeds from two compositions, that is to say, sulfur and magnesia. Yet, once it has been reduced and conjoined into a unified whole, the philosophers have termed it water, the spume of Boletus, and the thickness of gold. When, however, it has been reduced to quicksilver, they identify it as the sulfur of water. Furthermore, when sulfur contains sulfur, they denominate it a fiery venom, because it is a potent arcanum that ascends from those substances with which you are familiar. The 50th dictum, Pandolfus declares, If, O Belus, thou dost articulate the sublimation of sulfur for the benefit of future generations, thou wilt have accomplished an excellent deed. And the Turba, Do thou elucidate it, therefore, O Pandolfus? And he replies, The philosophers have commanded that quicksilver be extracted from cambar, and albeit they spoke truthfully, there remains a slight ambiguity within these words, the obscurity of which I shall now dispel. See to it, then, that the quicksilver is sublimed within tabernacles, and extract it from the cambar. However, there exists another cambar, within sulfur, which Belus has already demonstrated to you. For from sulfur commingled with sulfur, manifold operations proceed. Once it has been sublimed, there issues from the cambar that particular quicksilver known as athelia, orpiment, zendrio or sandaric, ebsemic, magnesia, kuhul or chuhul, alongside a multitude of other appellations. Concerning this substance, the philosophers have asserted that, when governed by its proper regimen, its immaculate white nature emerges, leaving no vestige of shadow therein. Subsequently, the envious have referred to it as the lead of ebmich, magnesia, martech, and white copper. For when it is genuinely whitened, it is entirely devoid of shadow and blackness. It has forsaken its thickened, ponderous bodies, and concurrently, a pure, humid spirit has ascended, a spirit which is the very essence of the tincture. Accordingly, the sages have affirmed that copper possesses both a soul and a body. Its soul is spirit, whereas its body is dense. Therefore, it is incumbent upon you to destroy this dense body until you extract a tinging spirit from it. Furthermore, blend the spirit thus extracted with light sulfur until you, as investigators, behold your design accomplished. The 51st dictum. Orphokos declares, You have narrated nothing, O Pandolfus, save the final regimen of this body. You have, therefore, composed an ambiguous description for your readers. Yet, if its regimen were to be delineated from the very beginning, you would dispel this obscurity. The Turba replies, Speak, therefore, concerning this matter to posterity, insofar as it may please you. And he responds, It is requisite for you, investigators of this art, first to calcine copper within a gentle fire, akin to the warmth required for the incubation of eggs. You must calcine it with its inherent humidity, lest its spirit be consumed, and let the vessel be hermetically sealed on all sides, so that its color heat may be augmented, the body of the copper destroyed, and its tinging spirit extracted. Concerning this, the envious have stated, Extract quicksilver from the flower of copper, which they have also designated as the water of our copper, a fiery venom, and a substance drawn from all things, further termed by them as athelia, extracted from a multitude of sources. Furthermore, certain scholars have asserted that when all things converge into one, bodies are rendered non-bodies, and non-bodies are rendered bodies. And know, all you investigators of this art, that every body is dissolved by the spirit with which it is commingled, whereby it undoubtedly becomes an analogous spiritual entity, and that every spirit possessing the tinging color of spirits, and remaining steadfast against the fire, is altered and colored by bodies. Blessed, then, be the name of him who has inspired the wise with the conception of transmuting a body into a spirit, endowed with strength and color, unalterable and incorruptible, so that what was formerly volatile sulfur is now rendered non-volatile and incombustible sulfur. Know also, all you sons of learning, that he who is capable of reddening your fugitive spirit through the body mixed with it, and can subsequently extract from that body and spirit the tenuous nature concealed within its depths, by means of a most subtle regimen, shall tinge every body, provided he remains patient despite the tedium of the extraction. For this reason the envious have stated, know that from copper, after it has been humectated by its own moisture, triturated in its water, and decocted in sulfur, if you extract a body possessing athelia, you will discover that which is suitable as a tincture for any substance whatsoever. Hence, the envious have observed, substances that are diligently triturated within the fire, accompanied by the sublimation of the athelia, become fixed tinctures. For whatsoever terms you may encounter in any man's treatise signify quicksilver, which we denominate the water of sulfur, and which we also occasionally identify as lead, copper, and copulated coin. The 52nd dictum, Ixumdrus states, you will have discoursed most excellently, O Horfocus, concerning the regimen of copper and the humid spirit, provided you proceed with this exposition. And he replies, perfect, therefore, that which I have omitted, O Ixumdrus. Ixumdrus declares, you must understand that this athelia, which you have previously mentioned and elucidated, and which the envious have designated by a multitude of names, does indeed whiten, and it tinges once it is whitened. Then, truly, the philosophers have named it the flower of gold, as it is a certain natural substance. Do you not recall what the philosophers have affirmed, that before it arrives at this terminus, copper cannot tinge? Yet when it is tinged, it imparts its tinge to others, because quicksilver tinges when it is combined with its tincture. However, when it is combined with those 10 substances which the philosophers have denominated fermented urines, they have then termed this entire process multiplication. Conversely, some have identified their commingled bodies as corsifol and gum of gold. Consequently, those nomenclatures found within the treatises of the philosophers, which are often deemed superfluous and vain, are simultaneously true and fictitious, for they ultimately represent one substance, one philosophy, and one method. This is the quicksilver that is indeed extracted from all things, from which all things are generated, and which is also the pure water that eradicates the shade of copper. Furthermore, understand that this quicksilver, upon being whitened, becomes a sulfur that contains sulfur, manifesting as a venom with a brilliance akin to marble. This the envious call ethelia, orpiment, and sandarac, from which a tincture and pure spirit ascend via a mild fire, and the entire pure flower is sublimated, a flower that becomes entirely quicksilver. It is, therefore, a most profound arcanum, which the philosophers have thus described, because sulfur alone possesses the capacity to whiten copper. You, O investigators of this art, must recognize that the aforementioned sulfur cannot whiten copper until it is itself whitened within the work. And know also that it is the innate tendency of this sulfur to escape. When, therefore, it flees from its own dense bodies and is sublimated as a vapor, it is incumbent upon you to retain it by alternative means, using quicksilver of its own kind, lest it vanish entirely. For this reason the philosophers have declared that sulfurs are contained by sulfurs. Know further that sulfurs tinge, and subsequently they are certain to escape unless they are conjoined with quicksilver of their own kind. Do not therefore assume that because it tinges and subsequently escapes, it is the coin of the vulgar, for that which the philosophers seek is the coin of the philosophers, which, unless it is mingled with the white or the red, which is quicksilver of its own kind, would undoubtedly escape. I instruct you, therefore, to amalgamate quicksilver with quicksilver until they merge into a single immaculate water composed of the two. This, therefore, is the great arcanum, the confection of which is achieved with its own gum. It is decocted with flowers over a gentle fire and with earth. It is reddened with mucra, alongside vinegar, salt, and nitre, and with mutil it is transformed into rubigo, or by means of any of the select tinging agents present within our coin. The 53rd dictum. Exuminus states, "The envious have obfuscated the entire art through a multiplicity of names, yet the complete work must fundamentally be the art of the coin. For the philosophers have enjoined the doctors of this discipline to forge coin-like gold, which these same philosophers have also designated by all manner of appellations." The Turba answers, "Inform posterity, therefore, O Exuminus, concerning a few of these names, that they may be duly warned." And he responds, they have named it salting, sublimating, washing and triturating ethelias, whitening in the fire, repeatedly decocting vapor and coagulating, transforming into rubigo, the confection of ethyl, the art of the water of sulfur, and coagula. By all these designations is that operation known which has triturated and whitened copper. Furthermore, understand that quicksilver is white to the eye, but when it is enveloped by the smoke of sulfur, it reddens and becomes camber. Therefore, when quicksilver is decocted with its confections, it is turned to red, and hence the philosopher observes that the nature of lead is swiftly transmuted. Do you not perceive that the philosophers have spoken without envy? Thus we engage in manifold methods of trituration and reiteration, so that you may extract the spirits residing within the vessel, which the fire has not ceased to burn continuously. However, the water placed with these substances prevents the fire from incinerating them, and it befalls these matters that the more they are engulfed by the flame of the fire, the more they retreat into the depths of the water, lest they be injured by the intense heat. Instead, the water receives them into its belly and repels the fiery flames from them. The Turba answers, "Unless you render bodies non-bodies, you achieve nothing." Yet, concerning the sublimation of water, the philosophers have discoursed extensively. And know that unless you diligently triturate the substance within the fire, the ethelia does not ascend, and when it fails to ascend, you achieve nothing. When, however, it ascends, it serves as an instrument for the intended tincture with which you tinge, and concerning this, Ethelia Hermes states, "Sift the things that you know," but another advises, "Liquefy the things." Therefore, Aras declares, unless you pound the substance diligently in the fire, Ethelia does not ascend. The Master has put forth a perspective which I shall now elucidate for the reasoners. Know that a mighty wind of the south, when it is stirred up, sublimates the clouds and elevates the vapors of the sea. The Turba replies, "You have spoken obscurely, and I shall explain the testa and the vessel wherein resides the incombustible sulfur, but I order you to congeal the fluxible quicksilver from a multitude of things, that two may be made 3, and 4 1, and 2 1. The 54th dictum. Anaxagoras states, "Take the volatile burnt substance which lacks a body, and incorporate it. Then take the ponderous substance, having smoke, and thirsting to imbibe." The Turba replies, "Explain, O Anaxagoras, what is this obscurity which you expound, and beware of being envious? And I testify to you that this volatile burnt substance, and this other which thirsts, are ethelia which has been conjoined with sulfur. Therefore place these within a glass vessel over the fire, and cook them until the entirety becomes cambar. Then God will accomplish the arcanum you seek. But I direct you to cook continuously, and not to grow weary of repeating the process. And know that the perfection of this work is the confection of the water of sulfur with tabula. Finally, it is cooked, until it becomes rubigo, for all the philosophers have declared, he who is able to turn rubigo into golden venom has already achieved the desired work, but otherwise his labor is vain." The 55th dictum. Zenon declares Pythagoras has discoursed concerning the water, which the envious have called by all names. Finally, at the conclusion of his book, he has treated of the ferment of gold, ordaining that thereon should be imposed the clean water of sulfur, and a small quantity of its gum. I am astonished, O entire Turba, how the envious have in this work discoursed of the perfection rather than the commencement of the same. The Turba inquires, Why therefore have you left it to putrefy? And you have spoken truly, putrefaction does not take place without the dry and the humid, but the vulgar putrefy with the humid. Thus the humid is merely coagulated with the dry. But out of both arises the beginning of the work. Notwithstanding, the envious have divided this work into 3 parts, asserting that one quickly flees, but the other is fixed and immovable. The 56th dictum. Constance states, What have you to do with the treatises of the envious? For it is necessary that this work should deal with 4 things. They reply, Demonstrate therefore, what are those 4? And earth, water, air, and fire. You possess then those 4 elements without which nothing is ever generated, nor is anything absolved within the art. Mix therefore the dry with the humid, which are earth and water, and cook them in the fire and in the air, from whence the spirit and the soul are desiccated. and know that the tenuous tinging agent draws its power out of the tenuous portion of the earth, out of the tenuous portion of the fire and of the air, while out of the tenuous portion of the water, a tenuous spirit has been desiccated. This, therefore, is the process of our work, namely, that everything may be turned into earth when the tenuous parts of these elements are extracted, because a body is then composed, which is a kind of atmospheric entity, and thereafter tinges the imposed body of coins. Beware, however, O all you investigators of this art, lest you multiply substances, for the envious have multiplied and destroyed for you. They have also described various regimens, so that they might deceive. They have further called it the humid, with all the humid, and the dry with all the dry, by the name of every stone and metal, the gall of marine animals, the winged creatures of heaven and reptiles of the earth. But let those of you who would tinge observe that bodies are tinged with bodies. For I impart to you what the philosopher stated briefly and truly at the commencement of his book. In the art of gold resides the quicksilver from Cambar, and in coins resides the quicksilver from the male. In nothing, however, look beyond this, since the two quicksilvers are also one. The 57th Dictum. Acratus declares, I signify to posterity that I render philosophy proximal to the sun and the moon. He, therefore, who would attain the truth, let him take the moisture of the sun and the spume of the moon. The Turba inquires, Why are you made an adversary to your brethren? And he, I have spoken nothing but the truth. But they, take what the Turba has taken. And he, I was so intending. Yet, if you are willing, I direct posterity to take a portion of the coins which the philosophers have ordered, which Hermes has also adapted for the true tinging, and a portion of the copper of the philosophers, to mix the same with the coins, and to place all four bodies into the vessel, the mouth of which must be carefully closed, lest the water escape. Cooking must proceed for 7 days, at which time the copper, already pounded with the coins, is found turned into water. Let both be slowly cooked once more, and fear nothing. Then let the vessel be opened, and a blackness will appear above. Repeat the process. Cook continually until the blackness of kuhul, which originates from the blackness of the coins, is consumed. For when that is consumed, a precious whiteness will appear upon them. Finally, being returned to their proper place, they are cooked until the entirety is dried and is turned into stone. Also repeatedly and continuously cook that stone born of copper and the coins with a fire sharper than the former, until the stone is destroyed, broken up, and turned into cinder, which is a precious cinder. Alas, O you sons of the doctrine, how precious is that which is produced from it! Mixing, therefore, the cinder with water, cook it again, until that cinder liquefies therewith, and then cook and imbue it with permanent water, until the composition becomes sweet and mild and red. Imbue it until it becomes humid. Cook it in a still hotter fire, and carefully close the mouth of the vessel. For by this regimen, fugitive bodies become non-fugitive. Spirits are turned into bodies, bodies into spirits, and both are connected together. Then spirits are made bodies possessing a tinging and germinating soul. The Turba replies, Now have you notified posterity that rubigo attaches itself to copper after the blackness is washed away with permanent water? Then it is congealed and becomes a body of magnesia. Finally, it is cooked until the entire body is broken apart. Afterwards, the volatile substance is turned into a cinder and becomes copper without its shadow. Attrition also truly takes place. Concerning, therefore, the work of the philosophers, what have you delivered to posterity, seeing that you have by no means called things by their proper names? And he, following your own footsteps, I have discoursed even as you have. Benellis replies, You speak truly, for if you did otherwise, we should not order your sayings to be written in our books. The 58th Dictum. Balga states, The entire Turba, O Acratus, has already spoken, as you have seen, but a benefactor sometimes deceives, though his intention is to do good. And they, you speak truly. Proceed, therefore, according to your judgment, and beware of envy. Then he, You must know that the envious have described this arcanum in the shadows, in physical reasoning and astronomy, and the art of images. They have also likened it to trees. They have ambiguously concealed it by the names of metals, vapors, and reptiles, as is generally perceived in all their work. I, nevertheless, direct you, investigators of this science, to take iron and forge it into plates. Finally, mix it with venom, and deposit it within its vessel, the aperture of which must be sealed most meticulously, and beware lest you excessively increase the humor, or, on the other hand, lest it remain too dry, but agitate it vigorously as a mass, because if the water is in excess, it will not be contained within the chimney, while, if it is overly dry, it will neither be conjoined nor cooked within the chimney. Therefore I direct you to confect it diligently. Finally, situate it within its vessel, the mouth of which must be sealed internally and externally with clay, and, having kindled coals above it, after several days you shall open it, and therein shall you discover the iron plates, already liquefied, while upon the lid of the vessel you shall find globules. For when the fire is kindled, the vinegar ascends, because its spiritual nature passes into the air, wherefore I direct you to preserve that portion separately. You must also recognize that by multiplied decoctions and attritions it is congealed and colored by the fire, and its nature is profoundly altered. Through a similar decoction and liquefaction cambar is not disjoined. I notify you that by the aforementioned frequent decoction the weight of a third part of the water is consumed, but the residue becomes a wind within the camber of the second spirit. And know that nothing is more precious or more excellent than the red sand of the sea, for the sputum of Luna is united with the light of the sun's rays. Luna is perfected by the advent of night, and by the heat of the sun the dew is congealed. Then, that being wounded, the dew of the death-dealer is adjoined, and the more the days pass on, the more intensely is it congealed, and is not burned, for he who cooks with the sun is himself congealed, and that signal whiteness causes it to vanquish the terrene fire. Then Benites states, "Do you not know, O Balgus, that the spume of Luna tinges nothing except our copper? And Balgus, you speak truly. And he, why therefore have you neglected to describe that tree, of the fruit of which whosoever eats shall hunger nevermore?" And Balgus, a certain individual who has pursued this science, has imparted to me after what manner he discovered this same tree, and appropriately operating, did extract the fruit and partake of it. But when I inquired of him concerning its growth and increment, he described that pure whiteness, assuming that the same is found without any laborious disposition. Then its perfection is the fruit thereof. But when I further asked how it is nourished with sustenance until it fructifies, he said, "Take that tree, and construct a house about it, which shall wholly surround the same, which shall also be circular, darkened, encompassed by dew, and shall have placed within it a man of 100 years, shut and secure the door lest dust or wind should reach them. Then in the time of 180 days send them away to their homes. I declare that the man shall not cease to consume the fruit of that tree unto the perfection of the number of the days until the old man shall become young. O what marvelous natures, which have transfigured the soul of that aged man into a juvenile body, and the Father is made into the Son. Blessed be you, O most excellent God. The 59th Dictum. Theophilus declares, I propose to discourse further concerning those matters which Benites has narrated. And the Turba, speak, brother, for your brother has discoursed elegantly. And he, following in the footsteps of Benites, I shall perfect his declarations. It must be recognized that all the philosophers, while they have concealed this disposition, yet spoke the truth in their treatises when they named the water of life, for this reason, that whatsoever is commingled with the said water first perishes, then revives and becomes young. And know, all you disciples, that iron does not become rusty except by reason of this water, because it tinges the plates. It is then placed in the sun until it liquefies, and is thoroughly imbued, after which it is congealed. In these days it grows rusty, but silence is preferable to such illumination. The Turba answers, O Theophilus, beware of succumbing to envy, and conclude your discourse. And he, would that I might repeat the same, and they, what is your will? Then he, certain fruits, which issue first from that perfect tree, do flourish at the onset of summer, and the more they are multiplied, the more are they adorned, until they are perfected, and being mature become sweet. In a similar manner that woman, fleeing from her own children, with whom she resides, although partially aggrieved, yet does not tolerate being vanquished, nor that her husband should possess her beauty, who furiously loves her, and remains wakeful contending with her, until he shall have carnal intercourse with her. And God perfects the fetus, whereupon he multiplies children unto himself according to his pleasure. The beauty of him, therefore, is consumed by fire who does not approach his wife except by reason of lust. For when the term is fulfilled, he returns to her. I further reveal to you that the dragon never perishes, but the philosophers have put to death the woman who slays her spouses, for the belly of that woman is replete with weaponry and venom. Let therefore a sepulchre be excavated for the dragon, and let that woman be interred with him, who being firmly joined with that woman, the more he clasps her and is entwined with her, the more his body, through the creation of female weapons within the body of the woman, is severed into parts. For perceiving him commingled with the limbs of a woman, he becomes secure from death, and the entirety is transformed into blood. Yet the philosophers, beholding him turned into blood, abandon him in the sun for certain days, until the lenitude is entirely consumed, the blood desiccates, and they discover that venom which is now manifest. Then the wind is concealed. The 60th dictum. Benella states, "Know, all you disciples, that among the elect substances nothing becomes efficacious without conjunction and regimen, for sperma is generated out of blood and desire. As the man mingles with the woman, the sperm is nourished by the humor of the womb, and by the moistening blood, and by heat, and when 40 nights have elapsed the sperm is formed. Yet if the humidity of the blood and of the womb were devoid of heat, the sperm would not be dissolved, nor would the fetus be procreated. God, however, has ordained that heat and blood for the nourishment of the sperm until the fetus is brought forth, after which it is not nourished, save by milk and fire, sparingly and gradually, whilst it remains as dust, and the more it burns the more, the bones being strengthened, it is guided towards youth, arriving at which it becomes independent. Thus does it behove you also to act within this art. Know that without heat nothing is ever generated, and that the bath causes the matter to perish by means of intense heat. If indeed it is frigid, it repels and disperses, but if it has been properly tempered, it proves convenient and sweet to the body, whereby the veins become smooth and the flesh is augmented. Behold, it has been demonstrated to you, all you disciples. Understand, therefore, and in all things which you attempt to govern, fear God." The 61st dictum. Moses declares, "It is to be observed that the envious have designated lead of copper as instruments of formation, dissimulating, deceiving posterity, to whom I give notice that there are no instruments except from our own white, strong, and splendid powder, and from our concave stone and marble, to the entire work whereof there is no more suitable powder, nor one more intimately conjoined to our composition, than the powder of alochia, out of which are produced instruments of formation. Furthermore, the philosophers have previously stated, take instruments out of the egg, yet they have not revealed what the egg is, nor of what bird. Be advised that the regimen of these substances is more arduous than the entirety of the work, because if the composition is governed excessively, its light is seized and extinguished by the sea. For this reason the philosophers have decreed that it must be governed with profound judgment. Therefore, when the moon is at its full, take this matter and place it in sand until it is dissolved. Furthermore, understand that while you place it in the sand and repeat this procedure, unless you possess unwavering patience, you shall err in your governance and corrupt the operation. Cook it, therefore, over a gentle fire until you observe its dissolution. Subsequently, extinguish it with vinegar, and you shall discover one substance separated from its 3 companions. Be aware that the first, the ixiar, commingles, the second burns, while the third liquefies. Primarily, therefore, introduce 9 ounces of vinegar on 2 occasions, first while the vessel is being heated, and second once it has achieved the desired temperature. The 62nd dictum. Mundus states, "It is incumbent upon you, O all you seekers of this art, to recognize that whatsoever the philosophers have chronicled or ordained, Kenkel, herbs, geldom, and carmine, constitute but a single entity. Do not, therefore, concern yourselves with a multiplicity of substances, for there exists only one Tyrian tincture of the philosophers, to which they have assigned arbitrary appellations, and having discarded its proper designation, they have termed it black, because it has been extracted from our sea. And understand that the ancient priests did not deign to don artificial garments, whence, to purify their altars, and lest they should introduce into them anything sordid or profane, they dyed Kenkel with a Tyrian hue, yet our Tyrian color, which they enshrined within their altars and treasuries, was infinitely more pristine and fragrant than words can convey, which also has been drawn from our red and most immaculate sea, which is sweet and possesses a delightful fragrance, and remains neither foul nor impure even in putrefaction. And know that we have bestowed myriad names upon it, which are all accurate, an illustration of which, for those endowed with comprehension, may be observed in corn that is being ground, for following its milling it assumes a different title, and after it has been sifted through the sieve, and its diverse constituent substances have been separated from one another. Each of these acquires its own distinct name, and yet fundamentally there is but a single name, to wit, corn, from which these numerous designations are derived. Thus, we identify the purple at each stage of its regimen by the nomenclature of its specific hue. The 63rd dictum. Philosopher states, I declare unto posterity that the nature is both male and female, for which reason the envious have designated it the body of magnesia, because within it resides the supreme arcanum. Accordingly, O all you seekers of this art, place magnesia within its vessel, and cook it diligently. Then, upon opening it after a span of days, you shall discover that the entirety has transformed into water. Cook it further until it coagulates, and is self-contained. However, when you encounter references to the sea in the texts of the envious, understand that they signify moisture, just as by the basket they denote the vessel, and by the medicines they imply nature, for it germinates and blossoms. Yet when the envious instruct, wash until the blackness of the copper dissipates, certain individuals refer to this blackness as coins. Agadamon, however, clearly elucidated this matter when he boldly advanced these words. It must be observed, O all you demonstrators of this art, that the substances or the copper being initially commingled and subjected to a single cooking, you shall achieve the prescribed blackness. That is to say, they all turn black. This, therefore, is the lead of the wise, a subject upon which they have discoursed with great frequency within their volumes. Certain scholars also refer to it the lead as our black coins. The 64th dictum. Pythagoras states, How wondrous is the variance among the philosophers regarding those principles they formerly asserted, and in their ultimate convergence or agreement, concerning this modest and utterly ubiquitous substance, wherein the precious essence is concealed. And if the vulgar masses recognized, O all you investigators of this art, this same insignificant and lowly matter, they would dismiss it as a falsehood. Yet, were they to comprehend its true efficacy, they would cease to disparage it. But God has obscured this from the multitude, lest the world be brought to devastation. The 65th dictum. Orphalcus states, You must recognize, O all you who cherish wisdom, that whereas Mundus has been imparting this art, and presenting you with the most lucid syllogisms, anyone who fails to comprehend his pronouncements is but a brute animal. I, however, shall elucidate the regimen of this modest substance, so that anyone initiated into this art may grow bolder, may contemplate it with greater assurance, and, despite its insignificance, may synthesize the common with the precious, and the precious with the common. Understand that at the commencement of the mixing, it is incumbent upon you to commingle elements that are crude, gentle, unadulterated, and neither previously cooked nor governed over a gentle flame. Beware of intensifying the fire until the elements are thoroughly conjoined, for they must succeed one another, and be enveloped within a single complexion, through which they are gradually incinerated, until they are desiccated by the aforementioned gentle heat. And know that one spirit burns a single substance and destroys a single substance, and one body fortifies one spirit, and instructs it to withstand the flames. Yet, following the initial combustion, it is imperative that the matter be washed, purified, and diluted upon the fire until all constituents assume a uniform hue, with which, subsequently, it behooves you to blend the residuum of the entire moisture, whereupon its color shall be magnificently exalted. For the elements, having been diligently cooked within the fire, rejoice and are transmuted into diverse natures, because the liquefied, which is the lead, becomes unliquefied, the humid turns arid, the dense body transitions into a spirit, and the volatile spirit grows robust and adequately equipped to wage battle against the fire. Hence the philosopher declares, Convert the elements, and you shall discover that which you seek. Yet to convert the elements is to render the moist dry and the fugitive fixed. Once these objectives have been achieved through proper disposition, the operator must leave the matter within the fire until the gross is rendered subtle, and the subtle endures as a tinging spirit. Understand, moreover, that the demise and resurrection of the elements emanate from the fire, and that the composite germinates of its own accord, yielding that which you desire by the grace of God. However, when the colors begin to manifest, you shall witness the miracles of divine wisdom, continuing until the Tyrian hue is fully realized. O wonder-working nature, which tinges all other natures! O celestial nature, which separates and converts the elements through its regimen! Nothing, therefore, is more precious than these natures within that grand nature, which multiplies the composite, and renders it both fixed and scarlet. The 66th dictum. Eximiganus states, You have already discoursed, O Lucas, regarding the living and concealed silver, which is magnesia, exactly as it behooved you, and you have instructed posterity to prove or to experiment and to consult the texts. Cognizant of what the philosophers have pronounced, seek out the latent spirit and do not hold it in disesteem, for when it endures it constitutes a profound arcanum and brings about a multitude of benevolent effects. The 67th dictum. Lucas states, I bear witness to posterity, and that which I articulate is far more lucid than your own declarations, that the philosopher dictates, burn the copper, burn the silver, burn the gold. Hermogenes replies, behold something more obscure than ever. The Turba responds, illumine therefore that which is shrouded in darkness. And he, regarding that which he stated, burn, 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 the variance lies solely in the nomenclature, for they are fundamentally one and the same entity. And they, woe unto you. How abruptly you have dismissed the matter. Why are you poisoned with jealousy? And he, is it desirable that I should speak with greater clarity? And they, do so. And he, I signify that to whiten is to burn, but to redden is life. For the envious have proliferated a multitude of names that they might lead posterity astray. To them I testify that the true definition of this art is the liquefaction of the body and the severance of the soul from the body. For copper, much like a man, possesses both a soul and a body. Therefore it behooves you, O all ye sons of the doctrine, to obliterate the body and extract the soul therefrom. Hence, the philosophers have declared that body does not penetrate body, but rather that there exists a subtle nature, which is the soul, and it is this very essence that tinges and pervades the body. In nature, therefore, there exists both a body and a soul. The Turba replies, despite your desire to elucidate, you have set forth obscure words, and he answers, I signify that the envious have recounted and declared that the splendor of Saturn does not manifest unless, perchance, it becomes dark as it ascends into the air, that Mercury is concealed by the rays of the sun, and that Quicksilver vivifies the body through its fiery fortitude, whereby the work is accomplished. Yet Venus, when she becomes oriental, precedes the sun. The 68th dictum. Adamus declares, Know, O all ye investigators of this art, that our work, into which ye have been inquiring, is engendered by the generation of the sea, by which and with which, following God, the great endeavor is brought to completion. Take therefore hulsut and ancient sea stones, and boil them over coals until they attain a pristine whiteness. Thereafter, extinguish them in white vinegar. If 24 ounces thereof have been boiled, let the heat be quenched with a third part of the vinegar, which is 8 ounces. Triturate this with white vinegar, and cook it in the sun and within black earth for 42 days. However, the second work is to be performed from the 10th day of September until the 10th day or grade of Libra. Do not introduce the vinegar a second time during this stage, but allow the matter to cook until all its vinegar has desiccated, rendering it a fixed earth, akin to the earth of Egypt. The phenomenon wherein one operation congeals more swiftly and another more languidly arises from the variations in the cooking process. Should the location of the cooking be humid and dewy, it shall congeal with greater rapidity. Conversely, if the environment be dry, it shall congeal more gradually. The 69th dictum. Florus states, I am contemplating the perfection of thy treatise, O Mundus, for thou hast not fully resolved the disposition of the cooking. And he responds, Proceed, O philosopher. And Florus continues, I instruct you, O sons of the doctrine, that the indication of excellence in the first decoction is the extraction of its redness. And he inquires, Describe what constitutes this redness. And Florus, when ye observe that the matter is entirely black, know that whiteness has been concealed within the belly of that blackness. It then behooves you to extract that whiteness most subtly from the blackness, for ye possess the knowledge to discern between them. In the second decoction, however, let that whiteness be placed within a vessel alongside its instruments, and let it be cooked gently until it achieves absolute whiteness. Yet when, O all ye seekers of this art, ye perceive that whiteness emerging and flowing over everything, be assured that redness is hidden within that whiteness. Nevertheless, it does not behoove you to extract it, but rather to continue the cooking until the entirety becomes a most profound red, to which nothing can compare. Know also that the initial blackness is generated from the nature of Martek, and that the redness is extracted from this blackness. This red has ennobled the black, and has forged peace between the fugitive and the non-fugitive, reducing the twain into a singular unity. The Turba questions, and why did this occur? And he answers, because the cruciated matter, when submerged within the body, transmutes it into an unalterable and indelible nature. It behooves you, therefore, to understand this sulfur that blackens the body. Know ye that this same sulfur cannot be handled, but rather it cruciates and tinges. Furthermore, the sulfur that blackens is that which refuses to open the door to the fugitive, and it transforms into the fugitive alongside the fugitive. Do you not perceive that the cruciating does not afflict through harm or corruption, but rather through the coagination and profound utility of these elements? For if its subject were noxious and discordant, it would not be embraced thereby until its colors had been extracted from it, unalterable and indelible. This we have termed the water of sulfur, a water we have prepared for the red tinctures. For the rest, it does not blacken, yet that which does blacken, and this realization does not come to pass without blackness, I have testified to be the very key to the work. The 70th dictum. Mundus declares, Know, all ye investigators of this art, that the head is all things. If the head is lacking, all that it endeavors to impose profits nothing. Accordingly, the masters have averred that what is perfected is singular in nature, and a multiplicity of natures does not improve upon that thing. Rather, it requires a single and suitable nature, which it behooves you to govern with meticulous care. For through ignorance of this governance, some have fallen into error. Therefore pay no heed to the plurality of these compositions, nor to those myriad things which the philosophers have enumerated within their tomes. For the essence of truth is singular, and the disciples of nature have designated it as that one thing within whose belly the natural arcanum remains concealed. This arcanum is neither perceived nor comprehended save by the wise. He therefore who possesses the knowledge to extract its complexion and governs it equitably, for him shall a nature rise forth from it that shall conquer all other natures. Then shall that decree be fulfilled which was inscribed by the masters, namely, that nature rejoices in nature, nature overcomes nature, and nature contains nature. Concurrently, there are not multiple or diverse natures, but one alone, harboring within itself its own inherent natures and properties, through which it prevails over all else. Do you not observe that the Master has commenced with unity and concluded in unity? Hence has he named those unities, sulphureous water, an essence that conquers all nature. The 71st dictum. Braca states, How elegantly Mundus hath articulated the nature of this sulphureous water. For unless solid bodies are obliterated by a nature devoid of a body, until those bodies become non-bodies, emerging as a most tenuous spirit, ye cannot attain that exceedingly subtle and tinging soul which lies hidden within the natural belly. Know also that unless the body is withered and so utterly destroyed that it perishes, and unless ye extract from it its soul, which is a tinging spirit, ye shall be unable to tinge a body therewith. The 72nd dictum. Philosophus pronounces, The first composition, which is the body of magnesia, is fashioned from several substances, although they meld into a singular entity and are designated by a single name, which the ancients termed the albar of copper. Yet, when it is governed, it is known by 10 distinct names, derived from the colors that manifest during the regimen of the body of this magnesia. It is imperative, therefore, that the lead be transmuted into blackness. Thereafter, the aforementioned 10 shall appear within the ferment of gold, accompanied by sericon, which is itself a composition bearing 10 names. Having stated all these matters, we intend nothing more by these appellations than the albar of copper, for it tinges every body that has been incorporated into the composition. The composition, however, is twofold. One is humid, the other dry. When they are cooked with prudence, they become one, and are acclaimed as the noble substance of multiple names. But when it attains a red hue, it is referred to as the flower of gold, the ferment of gold, the gold of coral, and the gold of the beak. It is likewise called redundant red sulfur and red orpiment. Conversely, while it remains the crude lead of copper, it is denoted as bars and plates of metal. Behold, I have revealed its names when it is in its raw state, which we must duly distinguish from the nomenclature applied once it has been cooked. Let this, therefore, be deeply pondered. It behooves me now to expound unto you the precise measure of the fire, the number of its days, and the varying intensity required at every grade, so that he who possesses this tome may belong truly to himself and be liberated from the chains of poverty, remaining secure upon that middle path which is unequivocally closed to those deficient in this most precious art. I have witnessed, therefore, a multitude of fires. One is fashioned from straw and cinder, coals and flame, whilst another is entirely bereft of flame. Experimentation demonstrates that intermediate gradations exist between these varieties. Yet lead is the lead of copper, within which resides the entirety of the arcanum. Now, regarding the days of the night, wherein the perfection of the supreme arcanum shall be realized, I shall address this matter in its proper place in the ensuing discourse. Furthermore, understand most assuredly that should a modicum of gold be introduced into the composition, a manifest and white tincture shall result. Consequently, both a sublime gold and a manifest gold are to be found within the treasuries of the ancient philosophers. Hence, the elements they introduce into their composition are unequal. Inasmuch as the elements are commingled and transmuted into the lead of copper, transcending their original states, they are converted into a nascent nature. Thereafter, they are designated as a singular nature and a solitary genus. These procedures having been accomplished, the substance is deposited into a glass vessel, unless by a specific manner the composition imbibes the water and undergoes an alteration in its hues. In every gradation, it is observed when it becomes suffused with a venerable redness. Although concerning this elixir we read in the maxims of the philosophers, "Take gold," occurring frequently, it is requisite to perform this action but once. Desiring, therefore, to ascertain the certitude of the adversary, consider the pronouncements of Democritus, observing how he commences his discourse from the bottom to the top, and subsequently, reversing his approach, proceeds from the top to the bottom. For, he declared, "Take iron, lead, and albar for copper," which reversing, he again says, "And our copper for coins, lead for gold, gold for the gold of coral, and the gold of coral for the gold of crocus." Again, in the second instance, when he proceeds from the pinnacle to the base, he states, "Take gold, coin, copper, lead, and iron." He demonstrates, therefore, through his declarations that only semi-gold is utilized. Unquestionably, gold cannot be transmuted into rust without the presence of lead and copper, nor unless it be imbued with the vinegar known to the wise, until, through the process of decoction, it is converted into redness. This, therefore, constitutes the redness to which all the philosophers alluded, because, however they commanded, take gold and it becomes the gold of coral, take the gold of coral and it becomes purple gold. All these designations are merely nomenclature for these hues, for it is imperative that vinegar be introduced therein, as these colors are derived entirely from it. However, through these entities which the philosophers have referenced under diverse appellations, they have signified more robust bodies and forces. It is undertaken therefore a single time, so that it might become rubigo, and then vinegar is administered unto it. For when the aforementioned colors manifest, it is imperative that each be decocted over the span of 40 days, ensuring its desiccation as the water is consumed. Ultimately, being imbued and situated within the vessel, it is heated until its utility is revealed. Its initial gradation becomes akin to a citrine mucra, the second emerges as red, the third resembles the dry, pulverized crocus of the vulgar. Thus is it imposed upon the coin.